please.
Paul Japlinsky.
Here.
Michael Del Santo.
Present.
Valerie DiPaolo.
Here.
William Dietzick.
Here.
Tom Lombardi.
Here.
James Morelli.
Here.
Christopher Palmieri.
Here.
Jeff Perry.
Here.
And the chairwoman's here, too.
I'm sorry. And Victoria Triana.
Yes, I'm here, too.
I forgot my roll call sheet. I'm sorry.
It's actually not. Let's all stand for the prayer and the flag salute, please.
Heavenly Father, give us the ability this night to see past what is first apparent and into the very heart of issues that are presented. Keep us open and willing to hear the concerns of the people of this community, and give us the courage to act upon those things which are best for Southington. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me for the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. You may be seated.
Madam Chair?
But while you're standing, I'm sorry. Please, could we have a moment of silence for Nick DiPaolo, who passed away last week, 2 weeks ago. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated now. May I have a motion on the minutes from our prior meeting?
Actually, before we make a motion,
Just a correction on the minutes.
Yes, of course.
So on page 7, under the appointment for fire commissioners, where it says Mr. Perry, Mr. Palmieri, and Ms. DiPaolo voted yes to Bethany Solari, we did not vote yes. We
No.
voted no to table.
The table, that's right. That's correct. So we don't have a stenographer with us this evening.
You'll take the notes.
But Kathy will take the notes. Thank you, Kathy. Any other additions or corrections on the minute? So could I have a motion for the amended minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
Second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any other discussion? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you for the amended minutes. Item number 4, Board of Education capital budget presentation. Mr. Menancy.
Madam Chair, the Chair of the Board of Ed would like to lead off, and then the Superintendent will follow.
Sounds great.
Good evening, Madam Chair, council members, town administrators, and members of the community. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. Steve and I would like to share with you the Board of Ed capital plan for the 23-24 fiscal year, which is in the past few years, it's a collaborative effort between the town and the Board of Education. We welcome any comments or suggestions that you may have, as the Board of Ed will be voting on this plan at our next meeting. I would also like to take this opportunity to invite you for next week at our budget workshops on Tuesday or Thursday night as we discuss our operating budget for the upcoming year. You're always welcome, you know that, right? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Open communication and collaboration with you and the Board of Finance is something we look forward to, as I know we all want to do our best work for our community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Superintendent, Steve Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on December 8th, I had presented a draft of a capital improvement plan for fiscal year 24 to the Board of Education for a first read. And at that time, I prefaced it by saying that I had every intention of meeting with the town manager and the council because it was a fairly short amount of time after the referendum in terms of trying to get updated, broken out costs associated with parts of the athletic facilities projects that we knew still needed to be addressed, referendum aside. And in addition to that, we had an elementary facilities committee meeting and learned about some of the costs really specific to escalation relative to elementary construction projects. And if you can recall back to last year when I met with all of you, there was a conversation about the athletic facilities referendum in fiscal year 22 and the elementary construction projects in fiscal year 23. given the updated information we got around the elementary construction projects, it seems to be less than desirable right now to come forward to the council in the spring here with 2 proposed construction projects. So knowing that the referendum did not pass and we are going to now be spreading out some of the athletic facilities projects over a period of time, coupled with the escalation costs associated with the elementary school construction projects, I met with the town manager and we had conversations in terms of what makes the most sense relative to the debt service and the impact on the community moving forward. In considering that, when I was doing this initial capital improvement plan, it struck me that ultimately whatever the Board of Education adopts moves on to the town manager, and he needs to make considerations when he's recommending to all of you what makes the most sense for the fiscal interest of the community. And so I felt it was important that I'm not just proposing something without collaborating with the town manager and having the board adopt it. He has, there's the old saying, the forest through the trees. The Board of Education is a tree. He has the forest, and so there are other projects the town is pursuing, I'm certain, that are beyond the Board of Education that he needs to take into consideration beyond just what I might be proposing. And so through some collaboration that has occurred since that initial iteration, what I've provided to all of you, and I asked the town manager to share, is I think outcomes of our collaboration that reflect what's changed since that initial iteration was proposed to the Board of Education on December 8th. So more specifically, I can walk you through some of the changes because I know you all received in your packets what the initial iteration of the capital improvement plan was. And so what you see now, I want to be able to walk you through what's changed from that so that I can answer any questions you might have or take any feedback you have into consideration and bring that back to our Board of Education for Thursday's second read. So I think, as I touched upon, one of the largest adjustments that you see from the initial iteration to what you have in front of you is the escalation costs for school construction and breaking down the elementary construction projects into 2 phases to minimize the impact of the debt service. So with that, we moved the second phase out of the 23-24 fiscal year as originally proposed and into the 25-26 fiscal year. We believe that really reduces or minimizes the impact to the debt service if that referendum were to be approved. Another adjustment you will see is that we moved softball lighting from originally proposed 24-25 to 23-24, and there are 2 reasons for that. One, we took another chance with a different vendor outside of Casso Booze who provided all the project cost estimates for the athletic facilities and found a favorable quote that we felt lent itself to the opportunity to try and get this done sooner than later. In addition, we, as everyone is aware, we are still under obligation through the state of Connecticut and the voluntary corrective action plan that we submitted to address that inequity of lighting on the baseball field and no lighting on the softball field. So this allows us to close out that corrective action plan sooner than later versus leaving that open for another year. And I think we can all agree that the costs aren't going to go down in another year if we wait longer on that project. Knowing that, another adjustment that was made was that we moved the roofs. If we're doing an elementary construction project in fiscal year 24, the roofs were initially slated for 24. We moved those to 26-27. That made sense. I talked with Mr. Romano because given the current lifespan of those roofs against the urgency associated with the athletic facilities and some of the safety and liability concerns that continue to exist, we felt that was something that we could move out past the second elementary school construction project, and again, to flatten out and minimize the impact to the debt service. A project that we've been working on, and I see the Deputy Chief is here tonight, but we've been talking extensively with our interagency safety committee about hardening of the school entryways. Some of our schools were designed prior to many of the situations that we see escalating today across the nation, and some of the entryways are less than desirable in terms of what's considered best in class for secure entryways. And so an adjustment there, I have a TBD because we have an RFP out right now, so we don't know what the costs are that are associated with that project. However, I have received costs from neighboring districts that have done the project. They've ranged from $800,000 to $1.1 million. The difference being several of our schools, if you think of Hatton Elementary School, that may not need an entirely redesigned entryway because it has the first set of doors and the second set of doors similar to many of the what they call Sally ports that are currently being designed. So that may be as simple as a fix of as a hardware installation versus a redesign of that entryway. Whereas some of the elementary schools, other schools don't have those two sets of doors that would allow us to create an entryway that's hardened in that style. The track, the fencing, and the walkways, we kept that in 24-25. We do view that as a safety concern at this point. Many of you, I know I've seen you up at the athletic events, and the walkways that you use to even get to the bleachers are process and gravel and dirt and mud and what have you. And so for people, for accessibility for our seniors and our disabled population, it's important that we can improve or maintain those to a better extent. And the fencing would be a natural replacement as a result of replacing the track. We were able to resurface a portion of the track just at the starting line so that we can use the straightaway for sprints. But as many of you saw, you took the tour with me last year, it's worn, it's down to the asphalt, it's past its useful life. And so that's a project that we think is essential at this point. Second to that, we moved the bleachers and press box up on the project 1 year from what was originally proposed from 26-27 up to 25-26, given the current structural and safety concerns relative. I know several members on the council have heard from citizens in the past about the bleachers at the high school and the lack of rails. We were able to put a temporary fix in place that there's a portion of the bleachers that have rails on them, but we continue to have to address the structural stability of those, or say integrity, if you will, of those bleachers through an engineer each year. And many of you also saw the press box and its condition when you took the visit up there. So again, both need to be addressed for handicap accessibility and for structural integrity. And then lastly, we feel we bought ourselves some time with the tennis courts, but we know the shifting underneath is only going to have a lot of the cracks return. And so they're usable, they're safe for this year. They're not of the regulation size that we had initially hoped and that we would get with an entirely new tennis court system installed due to the referendum. But this price tag associated with 26 would be to have an entirely new designed and engineered tennis court system that would have the integrity underneath the surface, and it would prevent us from having to continue to do the every 2 to 3 years extensive maintenance of the cracks and surface play. So that's in that spot, and what you'll see is that's not the entire cost of that project, and I don't know if the town manager wants to speak to, that's a combined cost of the tennis courts and the turf, and we don't list the turf specifically on our capital plan. I know the town manager has addressed that with you. I don't know if there's anything you want to elaborate on there.
Yes, my capital plan is going to show similar to what I explained to you at your last meeting, which is the turf will be repaired in 3 cycles. So 3 cycles from now, the turf, according to the experts, will have its useful life ending, and we'll have the funding in place by using budget reallocation money and the fund that's currently in place for the field.
Thank you. And lastly, we added pricing in the 5th year, 27-28, for HVAC in the 5 remaining elementary schools, which will not have been addressed at the end of the elementary school construction projects. This would bring all schools up to standard relative to indoor air quality. As you know, the 2 middle schools were recently updated, and the high school currently has an air-controlled environment relative to the air conditioning and heating system. So the elementary schools are what we're looking to improve upon there, and those quotes were given to us through a recent RFP that was sent out and returned to us. So I welcome any questions you may have, thoughts, comments, or suggestions.
Council members, yep, Tom?
Sure, I'll start it off. Thank you, Superintendent Mandancy, for all the information. I just want to clarify one thing, and then I also want to raise a question that I have from reading this.
Sure.
So in order to achieve the Title IX standards that we've been talking about for some time, is it fair to say that the $350,000 of lighting would bring us to the finish line there?
Yes, yeah, because we were able to do with unassigned fund balance money, we were able to do the dugouts.
Right.
We're waiting on the, there's a prefabricated portion of each of the dugouts, but the basic portion of them that needs to be done is in place. We addressed some of the playing surface, some of the drainage issues, and the batting cages. The area that I think it's not only softball, it's all fields, is irrigation, but that's not necessarily a Title IX issue. That's just a structural integrity issue that we have to work on with turf maintenance.
Okay, the other question I have too is that and I apologize, I'm not, maybe this was discussed on the Board of Ed floor already, I'm not sure. But this document talks, the detail report that we got, which is the similar expert that we usually get in our budget book, it talks about, there's 3 elementary schools that have not been renovated. And, there's a lot of talk around town about what's going to happen. Now we see a document which is going to go into the public record that talks about Kelly Elementary School for $71.7 million, and then Darrenowski at $77 million, which obviously are still estimates at this point. But can we talk about the missing school there, and that being Flanders? Has that already been discussed? And if so, can you give a brief explanation to the council?
Sure. So we have an elementary facilities committee right now that is still working through the process with scenarios. And so the engineering firm that we hired last spring, SLAM, and it was discussed on the floor, talked about the usage rate and occupancy of our buildings right now relative to current and future enrollment trends. And so what they discussed was the current occupancy rate of the 8 buildings, and depending on what we were to do, and a lot of it depends on site, the site itself of Kelly Elementary School lent itself to building an elementary school of 600 students, which at that point would preclude you from needing to construct or renovate a new school on the existing Flanders property if that's the avenue that the Board of Ed chose to go. With that said, the state wouldn't approve the Kelly project unless we presented them with a redistricting scenario that assured them that they call it right sizing, that we're not building a school larger than the enrollment can handle. But we believe that there's redistricting to be done system-wide, not just for Flanders School students. So any projects we do would not impact only Flanders School. It would impact in terms of shifting enrollment across all of our schools, because there's been so much pocket development and then pocket districting that's occurred in town over years. And unfortunately, folks don't want to touch redistricting with a 10-foot pole because everyone's upset if it impacts their neighborhood or their school. But the reality is if you let that continue to run its course for years on end, you end up with very uneven enrollment boundaries across the district, and then therefore transportation challenges, which is what we see today.
So I'm sure there'll be more information coming on.
Absolutely, yes. And we're at the point now, we have a meeting scheduled with the state for February 14th, and so a lot of it would be, to your point, Tom, these are placeholders. These aren't commitments. And so the reality is, depending on what the state says they will or are not willing to do, they may come back to us and say, unless you've already redistricting, we're not going to entertain a Kelly School project for that price because we need a commitment that the enrollment's going to be fulfilled based on the cost of the project. And so I think it's one of those things that the capital improvement plan is coming ahead of our opportunity to have conversations with the state. The 14th was the earliest we could get that meeting with them. As you know, there's been a bit of a transition up there, and so they would not meet with us until after they awarded what they call their December priority list, which is for the current fiscal year, the referendums that just passed for school construction projects. They didn't want to discuss any new projects until after January 1st, so we kind of hounded them all through December and got the 14th. So there very well could be updates or amendments to this at some point down the road, depending on the outcomes of those conversations.
All right, thank you.
Just to follow up to Tom's question, Steve, Kelly is a build as new estimate?
Yes.
Or renovate as new? Okay. And
Build as new.
Darnowski, build as new or renovate
Build as new.
Okay. So, and the other benefit to both those sites is there's land so that the kids wouldn't be, as Colleen and I know, serving with the middle school, kids were, and Steve, you were the principal
Lived
there
it,
at the
yeah.
time.
It's and that was the part with Flanders. The only ideal site for Flanders Elementary School is where the existing Flanders School currently sits. And that does not allow you any swing space, and that's imperative as part of a building project because of exactly what Mr. Palmieri is referring to, what we experienced as middle school administrators trying to do renovate to new while school was in session. certainly we made it work at that time, but it was with kids that were, a little bit older and a little more independent. And with elementary school students, it's not nearly as feasible. Kelly School has a great plot of land where they've done a test fit, and it would lend itself well to development. In Darrenowski School, they've done some work behind Darrenowski School as well to check the site map there and whether that could fit a new school. We still have an outstanding question that the town manager and I are anxious to hear about in terms of Darrenowski School as it sits. What would be, is there a reimbursement potential? Because, for if it's related to building a new school behind it, relative to the future of that building, because there's probably going to be a lot of opinions about its future and its use, and we just want to be informed and have that information for the council when the time comes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Steve. So just to confirm, so right now Flanders is off the table for the future for renovation, is what I heard?
Literally at this moment in time. I mean, after we meet with the state on February 14th, if they give us information, it's interesting, when we built the two middle schools or renovated them at the time, that was the flavor. The state was encouraging to renovate to new, you got more favorable reimbursement rates and what have you. Then the pendulum swung and they said, well, we're finding that, you're getting about 20 years out of renovate to new buildings. We want to swing back to new construction, and reimbursement rates fell in that favor to encourage districts to go that route. One only knows what we'll hear when we meet with the state on February 14th. And so I really hesitate to speculate and put information out in the community relative to the permanent solution that stands in front of us relative to the elementary projects, because I don't have answers from the state right now. But I do definitely want to acknowledge the work that's been done up to this point, pre-referendum related to the elementary projects, because if you remember last year we were initially slated to go with the elementary projects. We swapped the order of the two given what had happened up at the state in the Office of School Construction.
Madam Chair, I have something for the town manager as well.
Go ahead.
So Mark, on the athletic field improvements, we see the note that was given to us, 706 and 822 for track and walkway, and then bleachers, press box. Would those be bonded as well? So those are below the $1 million threshold, but would we bond those as part of the capital plan?
Let's take year one for a second, because obviously we only vote on 1 year at a time. So if you take 23, 24, the 26, 269,300, that would not be bonded. That would be budget reallocation money, government reallocation money. The 61,874 would also be budget reallocation money. And then the other one, the 350, which is the lights, my recommendation will be to bond that, which would be a short-term bond of about 10 years. So that would be a bond which would be, it's a bond, a non-referendum bond. It goes through the same process, but the council would have to approve it, planning and zoning would have to approve it, and Board of Finance would have to approve it, but it does not require a public vote.
And this document shows a 23-24, 71.7 million, but is that realistic given the fact that we would first have to have a referendum? I mean, the earliest we could do that referendum would be this fall.
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about Kelly School, assuming everything works out with the state, et cetera, as the superintendent just mentioned. We'd be going to referendum this November for Kelly School.
But that's not the year, see how it says year of request?
Mhm.
I would see the year of the request as being 23-24, and the bonding wouldn't start till 24-25.
Well, the bonding wouldn't start until much later than that. The
Right.
actual authorization is in fiscal year 23-24.
So this is
And
only
way
the
to-
authorization.
Right, and the authorization for anything over $1 million requires a vote by the public, which would be a November vote.
So that brings up my other questions that I had on some of the other stuff, Steve. So you show 26-27, you show the tennis courts, and that's near and dear to my heart because I have a daughter now that's sailing into the sunset on that. So she's going to be leaving for the tennis team. But knowing the condition that they were in and that they were just patched up, I know we had troubles getting those patched for a couple years for a variety of reasons, funding, vendors, things like that. I mean, what are we going to do between now and then? Because it's going to continue to be an issue, right? So they're definitely going to continue to need maintenance.
Yeah.
And there still is the safety issue of the fences being too short. So what will we do between now and then to ensure that there's funding and that they'll be maintained in a state that could be playable?
Good question. The last time we did this patching and crack repair, it did hold for 3 years. And then that's when, but to your point, Mr. Chaplinsky, you're spot on. It's the surface underneath that shifts every winter.
Yeah,
So you don't know until, the spring what's going to emerge. And, Mr. Risser and, the Mr. Romano and the maintenance department last year did quite a bit of work. But then we also used a third-party vendor that was able to get it done at a cost-effective manner.
So you're going to go back and request a referendum on that 1.5?
Not
No.
necessarily, because that also includes the field. So if you take the field out of that, and the field, remember the field estimate was $600,000? So therefore, that's not in there, because the cash is already available. In 3 years from now, the cash will already be available. So that would bring that number to less than $1 million, so you can do
you're
a
at
bond rather than
900.
referendum.
But I mean, even so, even if that number's 900, the two previous school years before that, you've got 822 for bleachers in the press box, and you got 706 for the track and the fence and the walkway. You know, at the very least, the 706 and the 822 is 1.5. And that, when on the last referendum that you had this past November, that was one field. It was one project, it was one field, but now we split it into two to make the numbers work. Have we considered going back for referendum for the 1.5 or just for 3 million for these two projects, for the 706, the 822, and maybe the 900? Go back for a referendum versus doing it through the budget, because I am concerned about the optics a little bit on it. It's you know, there was a referendum that was
Right,
there was a referendum that was voted no.
right.
Now, on the other hand, these are safety issues that need to be addressed, so there's no question in my mind that these need to be done. And I think the residents would understand that if we went back and said, you know, okay, we had a 17 million, it had a list of needs and wants. These are now the critical needs because they're safety, they're Title IX and all that. So why not just go back for a referendum on those items?
I think a part of the conversation, I think back to the conversations we've had with Board of Finance over the debt service. And at the time, there was around $17 million we were talking about for the athletic facilities, knowing that that was going to be backed up against the elementary facilities. And given where we are now with the current state of the economy relative to the debt service and the cost of these projects, I think our efforts were to try and spread it out over time to minimize the impact there.
Yeah.
Because the debt service will ultimately impact all of our operating budgets. And so I worry that if we go to referendum with a larger number, the impact that will have on the debt service backed up against the roads and paving that I'm sure he's going to be including in his capital improvement project, and the elementary school project.
I think you're talking about a conflict, though, of things that we want to fund and then getting the approval from the residents. If we talk about the impact would be less to go for a referendum, because, you know, if we do it through budget reallocation and one-time, you know, savings that we might be able to realize, then the impact is that year. We realize that to the taxpayers that specific year. But if we do this through a referendum, then the referendum is transparent. Everybody knows we're spending the money. I don't think it'll be an issue. But we spread that money, we spread those bond payments over 10 years, depending on the project, or possibly 20 or more years. So the impact to the residents year over year would be smaller.
It'd be
It's
the
just
same.
something-
It'd be the same, because whether you go to referendum or not, the bonding's the same.
Well, what I asked you before was whether we would do bonding on it, and you said not all of it would be bonded.
No, because there's smaller ones do budget reallocation. We always do between $200,000 and $300,000 in budget reallocation every year for the Board of Ed. So that's what those two items are. That you see the first two in year one, which would be 23, 24.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. So the ones we can't possibly do, the $350,000. So if it has to get done, it'd be done on a short-term bond, a 10-year bond.
Well, we have some time on it. I don't
Yeah.
think we need to make the decision.
Oh, no,
today.
you can't make
I
a
would-
decision on it tonight. What happens is that the Board of Ed will do a recommendation, it goes into my budget, then I do my budget, it goes to the Board of Finance, they look at it first, and then it comes back to you. You don't see this till April.
I know, but you know what? Oftentimes that's too late, Mark, and then everybody thinks as though the town council then has to approve something. It becomes, you get to the end zone, and the expectation is that, oh, we're gonna put it in front of the town council, it's gotta be approved now because time is running out. Whereas I think we should discuss this a little bit more strategically looking forward, say in the next several months, and decide the 700, the 822, and the 1.5, or some portion of the 1.5, how does that get funded? And should it get a referendum or not? I personally think we should. I'm willing to talk about that, but I based on the numbers I'm seeing, I mean, we're talking about $3 million in spend. And, you
So-
know,
Well, can I just ask, so if you're thinking about a referendum, you're not including the lighting?
correct.
So it would be,
The lighting is, I mean, we
'Cause the
have a
lighting's
Title
in there
IX
for-
issue on the lighting
right,
that-
so the lighting's in, so I was just totaling up. So you would be at least 3 million.
Well, you wouldn't, if you're gonna go to referendum, you would not float a bond for the $350,000. You
No,
just
no,
add
I
that
just
to
want to make
referendum.
sure that he's
No, I'm
not.
saying, but you added the lighting, correct?
No,
No.
I wasn't
not
talking about
include-
the,
that's why I wanna make
I
sure.
wasn't talking about the lighting. I know we funded some of that softball through previous capital.
No, I'm
funds
saying is
already.
the lighting has to be bonded one way or the other. The question is, do you want to put it with a larger number to go to referendum, or do you want to do it as a separate bond? Those are the two choices you have for this.
The issue on the lighting is we don't really have a choice on the lighting.
Right.
That has to be done.
Right.
That is a Title IX, it's a court settlement. We have to meet a certain standard that we haven't been meeting. In my perspective, that is money we have to do.
Right.
So that is, for me, one way or another, we gotta spend that, whether it gets bonded now or whether we come up with budget reallocation. I personally would keep that out because we don't have a choice.
Right.
So if it failed referendum, we'd still have to fund it. So, you know, I think that is something we have to figure out how to do. That is a Title IX issue. The other three after that, the 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, 700, 822, and 1.5, we should discuss. I really think that that's something,
That's about 3
as a
million.
team, we should all
It's
think
about
about that.
3 million.
So,
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Just to add to that, so Steve, first of all, thank you, because the bleachers were originally 26, 27. Those have been, again, talking about safety, those certainly have been a big issue that we've heard about as far as the safety of especially when you're talking about maybe the elderly at graduation, and because it's used for so many different things other than athletic events. So to your point, Paul, that would also back that up even, make it even quicker than 26, 27. And again, it's I'm sorry, 25, 26. But again, it's better than originally the 26, 27 proposal, but I am concerned still about will we make it with structurally, and is it safe for many of our residents up until then?
certainly, and it's all valid concerns that you're raising. I would say the only thing I would think about relative to the timing of a referendum is thinking about this past referendum. We had a need to have, which was the roofing project, and what some people may have viewed as a nice to have with the athletic facilities. If you put the athletic facilities against the elementary school, it would be occurring in the same year. People may see, how much debt am I willing to incur? I'm doing this elementary school because this needs to be done. I've already voted no for the athletic facilities project. What's going to make me want to bond against that again?
No, Madam Chair, if I may comment on that, that's our job and the Board of Finance's job to identify that the taxpayers are going to pay these bills either way, and they're going to be bonded either way. I think what Mr. Chaplinsky is pointing out is that we have an obligation to the residents to say, this is the money that we need to spend. Do you support it or not? And I think that the residents would understand that, hey, if we went out for referendum for $3 million, it's not all going to be bonded at once. We still have this stepped approach to it. So, I understand the urgency of it, but I also understand that Mr. Chaplinsky is looking for the most transparent way, especially with the results of the last referendum. So,
I personally would put a $3
and
million referendum on this November.
and I absolutely agree with Councilwoman DiPaolo and others who have said the $350 for the lights, leave that separate. That goes forward ASAP. So I think that we do have some pretty serious conversations to be had on this floor and with the Board of Finance to move these projects along with the taxpayers in the loop as at every stage.
I think that's important. I want to thank everybody.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
I have
Yes?
I have questions.
Oh, yes,
Yep,
okay.
Thank you. So, Steve, I just want to say thank you, because, it's been a curveball, right? Because the referendum didn't pass, so I know, Mr. Risser, you did a lot as far as getting this information and what should be done with the athletic fields. So I'm really happy to see that the lighting is going to be done next year. So if we approve that this year, then the lighting should be in place for next season, right? Not this season,
Correct.
next season, because we'll approve it too late for this season,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, all right, so I just want to make sure that's clear. But I'm really happy to see that. The other thing is, when I went through the corrective action plan for Title IX, so the issues for Title IX really were the dugouts and the lighting. I mean, I know some of the fencing and some of the other, for the ADA, the access walkways and things like that. So the question now is, looking at the dugouts that are up there, and I read in the plan that we're waiting on overhangs. So are the dugouts not closed in?
I can let Mr. Risser speak to the design of them.
Okay. I mean, Steve, just so you know, I've had some people asking, calling me with, they're driving by.
Right.
And they're seeing things.
Right.
So it's fencing,
Mhm.
and if we're waiting for overhangs, it doesn't look like it's gonna be a dugout that would be be closed, that you'd have it fully closed in the back.
It will have a canopy over the top.
Right, that's
okay,
the
that will-
overhang
That will be
we're
the
waiting-
overhang, right, call it a ceiling of the dugout, okay? And then the back of it will be enclosed with a windscreen with the Southington S on the
Right,
back.
so only a windscreen, right?
Well, a canopy over the top,
Right, but I
obviously,
mean, the back is not closed. It's not a firm, it's just, it's the fencing and then the windscreen.
Right, under our capital budget, that's what was proposed.
And that's what I mean,
Right.
we only had there was only a certain amount of money to be able
Mhm.
to, make some of these repairs. That, I think I'd like to know from the state Title IX coordinator that, I don't know if you've been able to speak with him yet, but the standard is that if it's the dugouts and the lighting, they need to be comparable. So I just want to know that the dugouts for the softball field are comparable to the dugouts for the baseball field, so that we're not going to be in violation on that. So I don't know if they know that that's how it's being done.
Well, my answer is, I'm confident that we are.
You're confident that they're
That's going to
comparable?
meet, there are different varieties of dugouts, Mr. Paulo, but I believe there are many that are utilized in the sport of softball in terms of what we're building.
Right.
Um,
But I guess the question is, do they come down and look at?
We have to send the pictures of everything.
Okay. So they'll see it and decide, okay, does this meet the standard of being comparable?
mhm.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just want to make sure that's a big Title IX issue, that Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Chaplinsky have been, we've been talking about.
I mean,
We'll
on the
wait for that
dugouts, you're
first.
talking about pouring a slab of concrete and buying cinder blocks to make 3 walls
No.
and
you're
painting
not-
them like the dugouts, like the boys' field has
No.
cinder blocks.
No,
for
but
dugouts.
these dugouts are not going to have the cinder block.
I know, what I'm suggesting is that that's not a huge expense. So I'm
Well-
wondering why, if you pour a concrete slab, you have 3 walls of cinder blocks that gets painted, blue night blue, Southington blue. And then you
Do
put your
we have
pavilion,
that-
you put your pavilion roof on. I mean, that's,
But do we have that in the budget to be able to do that? We only had a certain amount of money, and now the fencing is up. And all you're waiting for is the overhang. So that's my question, can that be done now? I mean,
Well-
that would be, in my mind, that's comparable, right? If you walk over to the baseball field and you look at that, that's a dugout, right? With the cinder block walls, that's a dugout. You walk over to the softball field and you're looking at fencing, you're looking at, it's kind of chain link. I mean, it all looks nice, right? But you're gonna just put a windscreen back there. That's not the same as the baseball dugouts. So that's a really good question, can that be done for this season? Or are we stuck now with overhangs on what's there? I guess because that's cost-wise.
Yeah, well, when the budget was developed of the capital money that was approved, this was the style dugout that was presented to us.
Right.
And I think it's comparable to other softball facilities throughout the state.
But is it comparable to the boys' baseball field? That's the question. If you read the corrective action plan, that's the Title IX question. And
Well, I'm confident that we're providing dugouts, and I think they're comparable. I mean, they may not be exactly in the same structure, but I don't, a softball dugout tends to be smaller to begin with.
well, that's okay.
but-
I don't have a problem with the size. And it could be fine. But I just want to make sure that if we're going to send pictures and then the Title IX coordinator is going to report that to the Office of Civil Rights and they look at it and say, well, the baseball field has these type of dugouts, softball field now has this, maybe we're still in violation.
Madam Chair, if it's possible, maybe there could be a follow-up maybe Mr. Risser would be,
Well,
maybe there's a,
I
you
think
could
that
ask
it's-
them in advance.
I think it's very important, Val, what you're asking. And I think that just for thoughts, Mr. Medancy, you're obviously in charge. So I would want to know before I spent the money if it's going to be comparable according to Title IX. And so it's just a suggestion. We don't want to spend money and have it not be approved. So my suggestion would be to get some pre-evaluation of it or an authorization, not to take away from you at all. But I think there is some concern there because it has to be comparable, and we don't want to wait and see, is my point. So anyway, just a thought. We really do have to move on. We have another presentation following us. Is that all right with the council? Can we move on? Thank you very much, Mr. Medansky. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and
Holly.
I'm more than willing to follow up with answers to the questions
Yeah,
with Ms.
thank you.
Ball.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you, everybody. That was very interesting. Right now, we're going to move in. I want to just introduce Dan Paradis. He's with us. He's a well-known icon in Southington, and Dan Laporte is with him. And so I'm going to just turn this over to you guys. Danny, you're going to come up here and please introduce your guest, and that's great.
Is it, yeah.
Oh, is that what we're doing? We're waiting for a microphone?
Is it possible to get Dan a microphone?
I don't know. I don't know.
No, they won't reach.
It won't reach.
Talk loud, Dan.
Okay. All right.
Or actually switch positions.
Oh, he's got to control, yeah, he's got to run the computer too.
You guys can, okay.
Yeah, so,
But
but
if
that's all right. Yeah,
if
he
you
can
speak
talk.
loud enough, Dan, it'll be recorded, so.
All right. Great. Well, I'm, my name is Dan Laporte. This is Holly Doherty. Holly Doherty is the president of VIF, which stands for Vital Information at Your Fingertips. And we've been working on this application for over 4 years now. And the way that we developed it is that over 2 years of it was talking to police officers, teachers, coaches, fire department people, EMTs. Holly's a long-term nurse. And she's also has a child with special needs. He's on the autism spectrum. So this came from a lot of experience in her life with a child like that and being a nurse. So after several conversations and dealing with Deputy Chief Palmieri, we talked to Southington over 2 years ago, probably 3 years ago, with this concept. We developed it, and Southington Police Department and the Commission on Disabilities has really stepped up and embraced the need for this to keep citizens of the community up to date, safe, and that's what this application does. People are able to, first responders, police departments, dispatch, is able to access this information and have this information readily available to them. They're able to access it, share it, and update the information so it's up to date at all times. So when Dan shows you this, you'll be able to see that. But Holly, just want to say a couple quick words just about her
Welcome, Holly.
experience.
Putting together my years as a long-term care nurse and as a school nurse, and having a son who was a frequent flyer to the nurse's office, I know that when I am, in that office, there are kids who come in daily. As a substitute nurse, if I didn't know these kids with autism, you can put 100 people with autism in this room, and every single one is different in how you approach them, how they're going to respond to me. And so I, as a mother, and not only a nurse, needed a really simple way to get my information quickly, because it changed with my son still, even though he's an adult, his health information literally can change on a weekly basis. And if I have to fill out paperwork and send it to the school or send it to a registry, that paperwork can't be updated. And if you take what we just went through with COVID, you may have someone with special needs. It could even be someone, special needs is also Alzheimer's or dementia. You could have someone who was put on oxygen. And if they filled out their paperwork and sent it in, and you send a first responder, and that's outdated, that was 3 years ago, that it happened, and they're thinking that this person is on oxygen and they're not, it just causes a lot of confusion. So as a mother and as a caregiver, and it also protects the responder, the police or the EMT who is going into a situation, because they now have accurate information on, okay, this person with autism, they're going to see that badge and they're going to lunge at you because they think that's shiny and this is what they do. And that could be threatening to an officer who just came off some kind of, really bad case. So when Dan brought us in to your wonderful police department, we developed this registry for you. I don't know if you can hear Dan, but he's our tech person, and hopefully he'll be able to take us through.
Hi, everyone. So this screen here was developed with Deputy Chief Palmeri's staff. And what this right now what they have is a spreadsheet, and I believe it's been getting updated. But before that, the data was outdated. I believe there were like 1,000 residents on there, many of which were either no longer in Southington, I guess no longer even alive. So what we developed is a screen that allows them to enter the information, or even the caregiver or the individual themselves, and they enter this information in here, and this gets put into our database. So I'm going to scroll down to, thank you. Thanks. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom part where you put in your information. So this is mostly completed for them, and once they enter this information, it would then go into the registry database. Now, at that point, either the parent or guardian could manage the data, or the dispatcher or the police department, so you have the choice. So in the beginning, it would probably be mostly, because that's the way it is right now, where the police department would manage the data. But over time, through some education with the townspeople, we would set up what we talked about, setting up hubs in different locations where we'd invite, for example, the Calendar House. We would invite individuals to come there, and they would be able to set up and get access to their own accounts. So from this, you could get information similar to what you get in a spreadsheet, where you get all the data for the dispatcher. But now I'm going to go over to the app, and in the app, which can be accessed either on a computer or on your phone or a tablet, they would see something like this. So let me get rid of that. So they have a screen like this on an iPad, and this would have information about all. Now this is just test information right now, but these are the individuals with special needs. If they're going to an address and you want to type in, you don't know if there's somebody with special needs there, you can just type in the address, that individual's name would pop up, and you would know instantly whether there's somebody living in that house that has special needs. So, for example, I'll just type in Spruce. I think I went to sleep while we're waiting here. So this individual lives on Spruce Street. So once you select it, now you have all the information about that account. I don't know, do you want to take it, Holly, from here?
So this is the profile page, and right now the way we're setting it up with your town would be the dispatch would see this. And if you can see the picture of the individual, and that happens to be my son. But there's little icons right next to this picture. So when the caregiver fills out what's called the critical script and anything about this individual that you need to know, these little icons automatically show up, which makes it a little faster to figure out what they have. So he's tactile defensive. They know they're not going to want to touch him. He's on the autism spectrum. He's hearing impaired. He's diabetic. He has had his COVID vaccines. So that gives you immediate information on the person that you're about to go in and help. If you look up into the upper left-hand corner, we have a stat script. So if you need to know further information on the individual, this is going to tell you everything about the person, whether it's a child or an adult. Now, the thing that makes this really easy to update is the caregiver can go in. We made these scripts really simple. Can you go into a script question, Dan? So I can't really see. Yeah, okay, so that's what it is. Oh, what is his primary diagnosis? So you just go in. We've filled this out for you. If there's something missing, you can put it in yourself. You just go in, boop, check it, and it will automatically update into the registry in town too. So anytime there's a change, it's just a matter of going in, putting it in, and you'll be updated. So you're not going to have someone, who hasn't updated their information in 10 years.
So what's really nice about this information is all of it can be accessed with analytics. So you can start looking at individuals in the town. How many females do we have with autism within a certain age? So it's really nice where this data, and that's one of the reasons why, two reasons why you preset all the information here. One is obviously to make it a lot faster and easier, but two is to make sure that you're getting accurate data rather than having them manually enter it. So like Ali mentioned, this is just one of the questions about what their disabilities are. So,
I'll let you go with the push notifications.
okay, yeah, I was just going to show how they forward the data. So from within here, all that information that's critical, like if you're going to the emergency room or anywhere, you could share that file. If you just go in, you could click share file. You could send it either through fax, through email, or even text message. So they could have that data. Picture the dispatcher sitting there. They now have the information. They then share it with the police officer, whoever's going to the account. Now, depending on the setup and the situation, you could have the police officers have access to this data directly themselves. So you have an option of either sharing it or having them access it through their own device. What do you want to show now, the fifth care planning?
The push notifications for the town.
Sorry, let's see.
While Dan's doing that, one of the other features on how we are able to keep the registry up to date is that if something needs to be updated, we can set reminders. So it automatically emails the caregiver that, listen, we need this information updated every 3 months. And it'll keep sending them a notification to remind them, and it'll, excuse me, to update that information. And it won't stop sending the reminder until it is satisfied. So that is an easy feature. So the police they don't have to get on the phone, they don't have to call people. They'll keep sending that reminder. And they can go back in time and say, listen, we haven't heard from these 10 people. And then after a period of time, the police wanted to call them to say, listen, we need this information updated. They could do that.
Yeah, like Dan mentioned, any of these questions that can have preset timeframes. So a simple example would be, if you had a question here, how is your health? When you first answered, it might be great. 3 months from now, it might not be. So you could set, there's a back end here that we won't be showing, but in the back end, an administrator would set up, as Dan noted, all the number of days. So you could say every 90 days, I want them to re-answer this question. That information would then come over either through a text, we call them push notification, a text message, and then they would have to answer it. So once they answer it, obviously the information changed. And as Holly noted, and one of the things I discovered, working on this project, it is unbelievable how often the data is outdated. Picture, even a school where the athletes are going somewhere, on a bus trip somewhere, and they might have information you might have in the office. Well, most likely that's not going to be kept up to date. In a Special Olympics world where the athletes are going out, traveling across the country, I think now the local coordinators would have a backpack with information about the athletes. So this would really change their world and just make it just a lot easier to get the data and have access to accurate, up-to-date information.
We also have the ability that if there is some type of blizzard or hurricane coming, to rapidly send, questions out to these families. Is the individual on life support? Are you going to need oxygen? Those types of things. It immediately goes out to the right people, because these are the people who are in the app, and they're, if somebody doesn't respond, right, and you want to go with that?
Sure. So if somebody doesn't respond, so if they know, they can send this notification using the analytics that Dan was talking about, by using a filter. How many people in town on the registry have oxygen? There's 50. They, like Ali said, they know blizzard's coming. They set a notification out 3 days ahead of time. Do you have enough oxygen to last? And only 30 respond yes. They know 20 people might be in trouble, so they could focus on those 20 people. Or if they need to do a wellness check, and they send out an alert to them saying, listen, are you okay? And a certain amount respond yes. They know that they have to go to the people who they didn't hear from. So the police, when they're doing a wellness check, they don't have to drive around to the people who don't need the help. they can go and see the people immediately who do.
So this page here, the support network piece, individuals, if it's a caregiver, they can invite family members to the account to help manage the account. So in the example, my dad is actually in this app right now. I invited my wife, my sister, all of us help manage the account. So when one of us takes it to a doctor, we all have the information that we need. I just used it the other day where, they needed access to some of his health insurance cards. So we have all of that. There's a document section down here on the bottom. You can click on that. We have a cards section where if I click cards and legal ID, it has information about your health. It has you actually can see the card. So all of the information is available at your fingertips for just about anything. But the support network piece, there's a lot in the app that we're trying to show you quickly, so sorry if I'm going so fast. But this support network piece has been just access. I always say, think of it as like a private social network. This is not like Facebook. Everybody says, oh, you can do the same thing, some of the same stuff with text messages, but that's not all private. This is all encrypted data at rest and in transit. The only people who see the data are people you invite to see it. If you wanted to have a family chat, you can just click on chat here and you can discuss information. You can send each other, how's dad doing, send an update. I'm taking dad over to Hawks Landing. Does anybody want to come? So you could easily keep everybody up to date of what's going on in the account. And the alert section here, we talked about this a little bit, but this is where you can just go type an alert and, if there's an emergency situation, you can just type in your alert message, you send it out. Everybody on your support network would get the message and say, we need help. So they'd either get a text message and or call. So the support network is a very powerful piece, which should be noted that nobody has access unless the individual, the caregiver gives access. If you wanted to keep this private just for you to have access, and just for you to use it, that's how it's set up. But once you allow first responder access here and start inviting family members, you open it up to only people who have to see it. And you could take that access away. So if you wanted to give it to a doctor, family doctor, or a coach for a weekend, you could easily do that.
And my son has 6 providers. And if you can imagine, they say, well, just go on our portal and get the information. Well, if you're caring for someone with special needs and you're trying to remember the password, and you're going on the portal and you're trying to have all these different areas of information, you can keep it in your app, but you give permission. So if you don't want the town to have, that bit of information, you don't have to. So it's simple to manage, but it's completely updated information that your responders and your officers are going to have access to. And for me as a mother, and I'll tell you, my husband was with Special Olympics for 40 years, so I've had access to literally thousands of parents to talk to. A parent's biggest fear is, how's anyone going to take care of my kid if I'm not there, and how to approach him. And I'm stupid with technology, so I needed something really simple, which is, I was so lucky to meet Dan and Dan. And this is so simple to use and to be able to update it and know that whoever is going to be taking care of my son has instant access and updated information, on his care.
I think one of the things I do want to just interject here, tonight I've invited the police department, the fire department, EMS, the Commission on Disabilities, because all of them have a direct concern about this. And so I would just ask Deputy Chief Palmieri, you've seen this, you've had a handle in creating this presentation, I guess, huh? Have you seen it once or twice, Chief?
As far as from our perspective, what we started to do with VIF is our special needs registry has been around for some time. It's set in an access database, and it's paper applications, or you fill it online. They mail it into the police department. We have our people take the information, we enter it into the access database, then someone has to enter it into our CAD and RMS system. And then what happens is we tag off of the address. What we're doing with VIF, what we want to do with the special needs registry is this enhances and makes it a lot more efficient. If we can get the people to fill out the application, then we can get this information in, and it alleviates the step about filling it in, fitting into the Access database. We're gonna work with our IT vendor to see if we can get it to sync into our RMS system, so it will be seamless. You know, and as Mr. Laporte had talked about, our old system, it's cumbersome to run reports, because what we did do when we had bad snowstorms, we'd see how many people are on oxygen, let's start making phone calls. Do you have enough water? Do you have enough batteries? Do you have enough oxygen? This streamlines a lot of it. The benefits also is, it gives you a contact sheet. So if our officers are on scene, and before they respond, they can say, look, you know, there's somebody on oxygen, or we had someone years ago with a mechanical heart. So we would notify the officers, and then if we had to get their information, we could have dispatch email this to a hospital. It could be emailed to the ambulance attendant, so we could grow it that way. This creates, from just a special needs registry perspective, it allows us to be a lot more efficient, and it allows us to give better service to the community. And then on the back end, trying to keep it, you know, relevant, is like we have some people that if you look at our database, they're like 137 years old, because we're trying, and again, we're trying to get it, but by able to check every year and sound out a notification saying, look, we need you to update, we need you to opt back in, that creates a whole bunch of efficiencies. You know, from a future standpoint, one of the things Chief Daly and I saw, like this app down the road, looking at for all our officers to put their personal information in, because God forbid something happens. We find a lot of times, even if one of our officers are injured minors, we're sitting here saying, who do we call? Who would the officer want? Do they want their spouse called? Do they want their sister called? So where I see some value from the police department, and as we make a stepped approach, is if we had this application for our officers, then God forbid something happens, they would know what my blood type is, what my medications are. If something happened to me, who does Billy want called first? Does he want his wife Chris? Does he want his brother Lou? Who does he want it with, contact numbers and everything else? But again, like I said, that's down the road. This helps us take the special needs registry and enhance it, makes it more efficient. We can provide better service. So that's what we're kind of looking at. We want to get it wrapped around the special needs registry first, and then kind of grow it from there.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think it's really a great app. It's so needed. So Bill, when you go into, you have it on the special needs registry, does that go to the fire department and the first responders, or do they have to all do this separately?
No, we're central dispatch, so even like with Chief Heath and everything, the way it's set up is like, let's say we get an ambulance call at 161 Mill Street, you know, Mr. Palmieri is not breathing. So if we're sending police or fire or ambulance, it'll key up in 161 Mill Street. If they're in the registry, an alert shows up in our CAD system.
Right.
Dispatch clicks on the alert, and it'll say, okay, Mr. Palmieri is wheelchair bound, hard of hearing, has dementia, whatever. So they would notify all the first responders, hey, you have somebody on scene that's on oxygen, you have somebody on scene that's wheelchair bound. So it's a way for us to give them pre-arrival information to help us better serve them.
Yep.
So because we dispatch for everybody, yes, everybody would get the
Everybody
information.
is on board with that. So it really then falls back on the family, right? If they want, which I would hope they'd want that, you know, the information to be shared with at least the first responders and police. But everything
love
else is pretty well protected.
That the family.
Yeah.
Their
Their information.
You know, everyone always says, what about HIPAA? So we are HIPAA compliant. We are audited 4 times a year. It's all encrypted, as Dan said. You know, the majority of this information that makes us different from any other app is anyone, whether it's dementia or autism or, you know, Down syndrome, every individual is completely different, right? So you can't just have a healthcare app. This is going to tell you, my son, if you approached him with autism, he would be fight or flight, right? He'd be panicky. But if the officer said to him, hey, what about WWE? He loves WWE. And immediately that would, you know, diffuse the situation and give the officer the ability to have something to talk to him about. So, you know, we paint the picture of the entire individual so that they can, you know, they can be helped and cared for in the best possible way.
Yes, Chris.
2 questions, just because you just talked about HIPAA. So is there some type of authorization as families register that allows for the release of their personal information? I assume that's
Yes.
within the app.
That's here,
And when we worked with Special Olympics, boy, do we go through a lot of lawyers, and that's a big
Right.
organization. So,
Okay.
so they really went over the wording, but that can be your lawyers, it can be anybody, but
And-
yes,
And
so,
you say you're audited 4 times a year with HIPAA?
yes,
Just to make sure. Okay.
yes, yes.
And then the second question is, so we're talking about an app. How transferable is the information? So if someone doesn't have the app,
Mm-hmm.
how do they get that information? Do you need the app to get the information that's in your registry?
Yeah, no, you don't need to have the app, and in the beginning, it probably would be, most people won't, right? They're either gonna register here, or we're gonna board them from, reading in the data from the Access database. So in the beginning, pretty much 100% of people won't have the app, right? And then the dispatcher will be keeping it up to date, as much similar to what they're doing now.
Okay.
Over time, through education, hopefully, we would then start, introducing it to the family. Once they go in, they can take access to the data and manage it themselves.
Okay.
So it'd be a phased approach. The first phase, let's get the registry built, let's get all the accounts on there, get as much data as we can. We can at least do the analytics, run the reports, do all the stuff that we have been talking about. But then to really keep it up to date and really make it a lot easier and take full advantage of the software in the app, you would really want the caregivers to take the app and take advantage of it.
And once they go online to fill that registration out, it populates an app for them. They may not, that's the education part.
Right, so I'm talking more about, let's say someone is in that, they use your system and they go to a hospital, they go to, or there's a healthcare provider that needs that information. You mentioned sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that receiver of the information need to have the app in order to?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. No, it can be, it can go
It's
fax,
really just-
email, anyway,
Okay.
yes.
Just like you share any other document,
Right.
It just puts it in one place through the app
Yep.
and it can share
And
out
you
the
can
information.
yes.
Very transferable.
Doesn't it PDF the file? I think
Right,
that's the
it's a
question. So
PDF
what happens
document.
is, if I went down and they're taking me to the hospital, and somebody says, hey, look, can you send this to the hospital, to Bradley here's Bill's meds, here's his med sheet. The system would automatically PDF that, and then it could go to a pre-designed email. So then they would
okay.
open up, it comes in a standard PDF format. So yes, that's how we would share. But again, that's the component of getting the rest of the community on board.
Right.
Because to have this information on scene, but then to get other partners to say, hey, look, can we set up designated emails to send here and send there? And that's kind of the beauty. That's what we can't do right now. We can give the officer some first responder instructions, but like we couldn't say to the paramedics that may be working somebody, hey, look, Billy's on all these meds, where if we have that app, we would have access to that and have a little bit more information, so.
Okay.
Probably can't see the screen right now, but this is an example of the PDF document. This is actually my father
And
here.
if they're going to an emergency department, I don't know if it's a law, but it's got to be faxed, and so it's faxed, so that they have it right away, right in the emergency department. So actually, it beats the patient to the hospital while they're in the ambulance, so to have that information.
And right now, we're working with an organization out on Long Island, and we're gonna have all the hospitals in that area, in Nassau County, put into our database. So when they get this information, dispatch or EMTs, they can automatically send that information to whichever hospital they're going to.
Well, and
So we
yeah,
have those preloaded in there, so if they're going to in general, they're going to mid-state, while they're there, they'll put down a drop-down and just send it to wherever they want it to go.
and the reason they're doing it is that their emergency departments get a lot of people with, special needs, and they have no idea who they are. So now they're going to be able to tap into a registry in New York, put the person's name in, and all the information will come up on house. So it's really the same idea. And again, the difference between us and, a standard digital registry is the people who care the most need the mom. I want people to have that information, and you can change it daily if you need to.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, Madam Chair, thank you. This is really great. I appreciate you coming out, Holly and Dan. It's a testament that you have the support of people who also came out to show support for this. As a person, like probably many people here, a person with family members who have special needs, I'll sign up for this tomorrow. So thank you for doing that, and really looking forward to seeing how the implementation goes. Maybe, Madam Chair, we can have them back in a year to let us know, or 6 months, whatever's appropriate.
Yeah.
And a special thank you to Mary and Melissa and the Commission with Peoples with Disabilities to also being
So if
involved in
people
this.
want to sign up for this right now, there might be somebody who's watching or will look at it and get this information. Who do they contact? Where are you going to be? How do they sign up?
If you go on the App Store, it's VIF Space Care, VIF Space Care, and then the town, and then it actually for a access code, and the access code for Southington is our town code, so it's just 0131. If they do that, they're going to be automatically in the registry now.
Very good.
Madam Chair, is it possible that
And
we
there's no
can ask
cost, right?
follow-up, just to maybe send some information, some of this that can be put into the meeting minutes?
Yeah,
Either
I
the
think that'd be
presentation, the
great, your
log-on.
We have-
presentation
yep.
and stuff. So
Sure, if you
we
can
have,
give us that?
yeah, that would be great.
Sure,
'cause
we'll do that.
It'll be on our minutes. We can refer folks to the minutes and.
Plus, we're gonna go like to, like the calendar house, let's say, get a date at the calendar house to help people, load it there. We go to Spring Lake Village and have different locations, to get people, to make sure that they're on it.
And although this is not true anywhere else, but in Southington, it is without charge.
Yes, that's right.
That's not true other places.
No.
Yeah.
But because we're joined at the hip in
You got
Southington.
these, you got these. But the really wonderful part about this is, the residents are doing this for the police department, but they've got an app where if they've got a kid in school, they're using this also for free in a school. And as a school nurse, I'll tell you what, I was subbing during COVID and in South Windsor, and I had this young man with autism tear into my office, and he said, she gave me strawberries, and of course, I didn't know who it was, and he had a substitute para that day who knew nothing about him, and he had an EpiPen for strawberries, and I had to use an EpiPen on this poor kid. So if that para had access the night before just to look and say, okay, this is who I'm caring for that day, so it gives the parent, everybody can have access, not just the town. Now they can invite everybody in, and wherever that child is,
Very
can be
good.
safe.
Yeah. I know Chief Heath is here. Chief, do you have anything?
I just echo what Deputy Chief Palmieri said. I mean, as far as the first responder network, I mean, the more information we have at our fingertips when we're responding, the better off we are, and the better off we are to serve our constituents.
Yeah, they're here. Anybody else from EMS? I don't think so.
I'm here, but
Oh, there you are.
I'm one of our road medics who came to basically learn about what your program is all about, and I know that the information that you guys are providing is huge to us.
Excellent.
A lot of times that we walk in the halls just completely
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much for the presentation, and it was quite informative, and I know we're all going to be signing up pretty soon, and it's secure. That's what I like. We have control of our own data, and that's very important. So thank you, everybody. So I appreciate everybody who came for both of the presentations. If you would like to leave now, you certainly can. We'll give you a minute or two just to leave, if that's okay. And then we'll continue on with our agenda.
Yeah, I think, right? I don't know, maybe not.
I don't think so. This new year feels a little different. This new year feels a little different.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Okay, let's continue on with our agenda, please. We're in item number 4, councilperson's communication. Anyone have anything this evening?
Madam Chair, I have
Yes.
one brief item,
Okay.
if I may. We had the opportunity with some other council members on the 17th of December to ring the bell with the Salvation Army. I was with Mr. Chaplinsky that Saturday morning, and once again, Southington kills it. I mean, everyone that walks by donates. And it's wonderful that we're able to do it because the money that we collect goes right back into the Southington community. So I want to thank the community once again for coming out. Everyone was always so polite, and it's a great time. We ring the bell and listen to Christmas music, and it was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I know some of us were there, so thank everyone for volunteering that day.
And some folks had other opportunities
course.
with their schools, and what I know that's how Chris is. I want to make sure I got that in, Chris.
Thank you.
So anyway, yeah, it was great. Anybody else?
Madam
Yes.
Chair? Yeah, thank you. I just have two things. Just a reminder, the Chamber of Commerce has their Southington Business and Community Awards coming up. So they're accepting nominations until February 1st. So if you're interested to nominate any individuals, businesses, there's some great awards. And you can go on their website and get that information and then make the nomination. So the Chamber, it looks like their annual dinner will be June 8th. That's where they give out the awards, so that's usually a big event. And just a reminder that on Sunday, there's going to be a Martin Luther King service at First Baptist Church, which is typically there every year.
Yes.
Celebration for Martin Luther King. So that's 10 a.m. on Sunday at the First Baptist Church. Okay. Thank you.
Just to expand on that, one of the things they've changed with that is they do recognize students from both middle schools. So even before COVID, they'll be traveling to Kennedy and to DePaulo this week to recognize the student that's selected.
Yeah,
It will be recognized on Sunday in
Wonderful.
front of their peers this
But
week.
then on
So,
Sunday too.
and then on Sunday they'll
Yeah,
be there with
yeah.
their families. So they're getting that recognition both in the school setting in front of their peers and on Sunday at the actual ceremony. I have a couple items.
Sure.
Too bad Deputy Chief Palmieri left. But last week in the Record Journal, there was a story about Southington and Cheshire creating the Auto Crime Task Force. So, I think that's tremendous. We've heard a lot of updates from our Auto Crime Task Force, and they've shared with us. Officer Lepore, who's headed that up, has shared with us some information. One of the things in particular, specific for Cheshire, is they mention how the Cheshire Council authorized the department to apply for a $35,000 state grant to focus on auto-related crime. I'm wondering if we could look into something specific like that for Southington, and if we can get an update of the work between both Cheshire and Southington. I thought that if we could maybe for
very,
future.
very good. I think that we should, and also, I'm not sure what vehicle that they were able to get the $35,000, but it would be good for us to explore that, because if there's money out there, we should really do it.
Right, especially if
Our
we're working
town-
in partnership.
That's right.
with
Our
the two
town's doing a
communities.
great job, and so working together, that would be tremendous, and it's still an issue in town.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you
Okay,
for
very
that.
good.
I'm wondering if I can make a motion to add to the agenda just really quickly under report of special committees. Madam Chair, I can just give a quick update to the Southington High School Roof Building Committee, just important to share if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'll make a motion to add that to the agenda.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried.
Okay, thank you. And then one other, if I could make a motion to add to the agenda. Under new business, item 6, we did receive a resignation for the library board. Chris Poulos, who served on that, as we know, is now sworn in as one of our legislators for the town. So we have a resignation there, and we're prepared. So I'd like to make a motion to add under appointment, item 6, library board of directors appointment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Anyone else? Council matter communications? Yes, sir. Yep, Tom?
Now is the time where everyone will be telling me their vacation time for February 25th. You know where this is going. February 25th at 1 p.m. will be the 18th annual Sloper Polar Plunge. I will again be the captain for Team Politicians. The last couple of years, we've had really good turnout, so I hope that some of you will join me, and if not, maybe consider a financial donation, which you can do in the comfort of your home, nice and warm. But this year is a little bit differently. The YMCA is doing I think last year they raised over $100,000. This year the goal is $85,000. And once they hit $85,000, that first $85,000 goes towards sending kids to camp. Anything above $85,000 is going to go into the Save Sloper Pond project and the Camp Sloper Capital Campaign.
Right.
So there's a lot of wonderful things going on over at Camp Sloper, and this is by far my favorite fundraiser for the year because it's fun and it really goes to a good cause. So if anyone's interested in jumping with me, please let me know.
Are they gonna move it to July?
Nope.
Then I'd consider it.
We'll be
Thank you,
sending money.
thank you for jumping on our behalf.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll jump on your
Sending you
behalf.
money, Tom.
Thank you. So just keep that on your calendars.
Caribbean plunge.
That's right.
Anybody
Talk to
else?
Mr.
Yeah,
Poole.
Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tommy, you can add me to the list. I'll jump with you.
Awesome.
It's double donation for those who don't, for those who don't jump. quick shout out over the holidays, since Melissa and Mary are here and we're thanking them. A hearty thank you again for your efforts this year on the trees and the presents at the Armory and delivering those. And special thanks to all of the tireless work from all the volunteers that they ask for help, and especially Crystal Restoration and Precision Maintenance. Couldn't do it without all of them. Thank you so much. So many. How many trees? How many trees did you end up with?
Mary and I together delivered 308.
308 Christmas trees went to the community, and hundreds of packages that went out with. That's wonderful. A lot of smiles. A lot of families were happy because of your efforts. So thank you.
Excellent. Who else? Anybody else? I just have a couple of things. Southington Catholic Schools is having a gala on February 3rd. They asked me to mention it for everyone. And also Main Street is having an opening celebration of the Yukon Health, Child, and Family Development Program, and that's on January 26th. On Thursday, if any member of the council is interested, give me a call and I'll let them know that you're going to come. So, anybody else as we close up council matter communications? Okay, very good. Let's move on. Report of special committees. I have the Apple Harvest Festival.
Sure. Chris and I met. I can't recall the date. It was two weeks ago.
December 14th.
December 14th. We had a brief meeting with the Apple Harvest Committee. Dave LaPre, the festival coordinator, is still waiting on, I believe, one, maybe two invoices to come out. So I know tonight was the goal for the financial report, but we will be presenting that at the next meeting from the 2022 Apple Harvest. Other than that, it was a brief meeting.
Well, there's two things, three things actually with the staffing. As you know, we have three staff members. So the first one, Melissa Kakuza, who's been our sponsorship coordinator, she is asking to return with the same contract for last year. So, the committee recommends that. Unfortunately, our assistant festival coordinator has indicated that she does not want to return. So we are posting that. It's a stipend type position, so it's posted internally to all Southington employees. They need to be familiar with the database and whatnot, so it is posted, and we're set to interview at our next committee meeting. And then our festival coordinator, Dave LaPre, has expressed an interest in returning. He would like an increase in that, so the committee is suggesting that we accept his contract without going out to RFP. He did request an increase in his salary as well.
They're reviewing that, right?
Mhm.
Okay, very good.
So we'll report back after the February meeting.
Very good.
January meeting.
January meeting, right. At our second council meeting, we'll be back here.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Chris, what was the increase versus going out to RFP, and what was the RFP results last time?
Last time, I don't think we had any. It was pre-COVID. I don't think we had any other applicants except for Dave when we went out to. Do you remember?
I don't think there was any. But the increase was prior to Mr. LaPre taking over. The position was an outside person. I believe that the payment was $25,000 per year, and Mr. LaPre's stipend is currently at $15,000 per year, and the request was to move to $18,500. So that was the request.
Okay. Anybody else?
I guess just a quick question, Tom, so has he given did he give a basis to the committee of why the increase? I mean, like job responsibilities kind of changed, or hours worked, or much more, or?
Yeah, he did. He talked about his time commitments and how much it takes throughout the year and during the festival, and the toll, the work that he puts in.
Because it's spread out over a year then.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions for
So
Harley?
just to clarify, we're going from 15,000 to 18,000?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we actually have to vote on it tonight, or if we can do it.
not on
Do
the
we vote,
agenda.
do we vote on
No,
that? or-
yes, we do. The council does vote on these positions, and I think it would probably make sense if we wait for, the results of whoever applies for the assistant position.
Do all the
And then
positions
we'll
at
do
the
the assistant and the festival coordinator at the same time. Sponsorship coordinator, as Chris said, there's no change, so we move, but I guess we can have a formal vote on the sponsorship as well at our,
Yeah,
the
it's
sec-
usually, it's
Yeah.
usually an action item on the agenda.
yeah,
not-
so it'll
not
be an
a-
action item at the next, the next town council meeting.
So the other question then is, for that administrative position, if the coordinator position seems to be more work, has the committee thought about increasing the stipend for the administrative position? Because I'm presuming that person probably does a good amount of work as well.
We can consider it, but it was not discussed at our
I mean,
last
because that person's leaving, right, so,
It was discussed. We talked about it because it would be someone new. The reason Dave requested the increase is because he's done the job for a number of years. So this would be someone new coming in. That's why the recommendation was not to increase that for someone that hadn't done the position before.
right, but I guess I'm just thinking of the position, like if the position is,
I think it
It's
did
more
go,
work.
it went out with a specific number on it, though, so I'd be concerned about popping it up, because someone may say, well, I didn't apply
It's
for it
already
because of this.
gone out.
It's gone
It's
out
already
with,
gone
yeah,
out.
it's gone
Okay,
out with a
okay.
specific number. It's not fair to someone who you give, a raise to, and then they say, well, I would apply it if I knew it was for that, so I'd rather just keep it where it is.
okay.
Very good. Any further discussion? Let's move on then to self-insurance. Tom?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. The Self-Insurance Committee met on Wednesday, December 14th. The first order of business was that we reviewed the fiscal year 22-23 self-insurance budget status. We received information through the first 5 months of the fiscal year through the end of November. And through the end of November, the claims were approximately $600,000 under budget. And like we always say, it's still early in the fiscal year, so you can't really place too much weight on that number because a lot of the deductibles have not been met. So we analyze that number each month. And as it comes closer to the end of the year, we can kind of place a little bit more faith in that number. The next agenda item was we reviewed the actuarial projections for fiscal year 2023-24 from Anthem and from our self-insurance consultant. This was a lengthy discussion item because the actuarial projections went up significantly. And excuse me while I get those numbers here. Sorry. It's over here. Excuse me 1 minute.
Sure.
Where'd it go? All right, sorry about that. There's definitely too many papers here this evening. You have it? Okay. There it is.
I'll need it back, but for my
Yeah, that's
report,
what I was
but-
looking for. Yeah, so the actuarial projection for the fiscal year 23-24 was $28.9 million. That was an increase of about 20% over the prior years. That's based on the claims. The actuarial projections were done based on the claims through October of 2022, so we're looking pretty far out. The Self-Insurance Committee also made a recommendation to again utilize $1 million of fund balance, which would bring the net cost to the taxpayers and the employees down to $27.9 million. Now, as a reference point, this is significantly higher than the current fiscal year, where we landed at $24.1 million in net costs to the employees and the taxpayers. Now, that number was reduced. We originally were higher, but the Self-Insurance Committee used $1 million of fund balance this fiscal year, and then the Board of Finance reduced it by another $400,000. So the actuarial projections went up by a little bit more than $2 million, but the impact to the taxpayers and employees was quite large. So we will be following this number as the months go on. However, we did need to land at a budget for the town manager and the superintendent, and that's where the net number for fiscal year 23-24 was $27.9 million. I know that's a lot. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to discuss them. And Mr. Perry was at the meeting as well.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, Madam Chair, so Councilman Lombardi, I think you got the numbers wrong. It was 29.955, and then we recommended use of $1 million to bring it down to the 28.955.
Was it 29.5?
Yeah, it was 29.5.
Okay.
I have the sheet here.
Okay, I'm
And-
sorry.
Yeah, so,
The net number was 28.9?
28.9.
yeah, the net,
Okay.
the net is 28.9, and afterwards it's 20%. So,
Right.
again, when I see numbers like this, even in my own business, they're very alarming. Before that $1 million decrease, it's 25% of an increase, so 25% of an increase, to go from 24.1 million all the way up to almost $30 million is $6 million. That's a huge dollar amount, and it's alarming, because again, based on, Joe, our consultant, this also costs the town employees more, and based on the spreadsheet he gave us, he's looking at a 14.43% increase for them to compensate, or, for them to contribute towards it. So again, last year, the Self-Insurance Committee, it was my first year on it. Originally, we recommended, I think it was $750,000, Tom. It was what the plan was. We upped it to $1 million, and based on memory, last minute, it was, increased to $1.4 million out of our reserves. Our reserves right now are $10.4 million. And again, we keep taking out of that, and at a certain point, we're taking money, I feel, out of our savings account to pay our bills. And that's alarming. And I have, our finance director, Jim Bowes, I think does a phenomenal job. I'm excited that he's our new finance director, and we'll get through this, but it's very alarming, and I think the whole council has to see this, because the last budget we did, I know I wasn't here, and I voted on the phone, and I was concerned that, again, we're running into a financial cliff. And again, we're gonna see huge increases on all levels of different things, and this is one of the big ones that we're starting to see now. And, again, when you start having big mill increases, or we start taking from our undesignated fund balance, is from the Self-Insurance Committee or the general fund, again, our bonding goes off of all that. So I think it's very important that the whole council, starts, or just pays attention to this item here when we go through the budget process, because it's a big dollar amount.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there has to be correction on some of those comments. The self-insurance fund has a separate fund balance, which is completely different than the town manager's fund balance.
Correct.
We have to make sure we're talking apples to apples here. And secondly, the fund balance of the self-insurance is approximately $10.4 million.
Correct.
And by all metrics that we carry as a self-insurance committee, we are still on the extremely high. We are on the high end of the reserve. So if we were to just increase that reserve, that would essentially be overtaxation of the taxpayers and overcharging the town employees. So it is prudent fiscal responsibility to utilize the self-insurance fund balance to offset, and we have a plan, a 4-year lookout where we are going to draw down to bring it to a more appropriate level. So we have to keep that in mind. Just because we're drawing on the self-insurance fund, we're not doing that to artificially balance the books per se. We're doing it to manage the balance. And then I also want to point out, I'll point out later at the Board of Finance minutes, but there is some wording discrepancies in the Board of Finance minutes that are a little bit misleading. For example, it says that November was a good month as they were $1.6 million under budget. That's on page 3 of the Board of Finance minutes, so there will be a correction there. 1.6 million was the actual claims paid in November. So I would, when we get to it, I'll make more comments on that. But yeah, I mean, to Mr. Perry's point, insurance costs are certainly an area of not just a municipality, but business in general. It's an area of concern. Costs are rising. And we as a town, we pay all our claims. It's not like car insurance where you get a bill and all of a sudden my premium went up. We are paying the net claims. The town is doing a good job of trying to manage employees, trying to keep our employees healthy, things of that nature. But to some degree, we are stuck with the bill, whether we like it or not. So I don't want to think like, we're just throwing numbers into this budget and we have to pay it. This is what the employees are being billed by their healthcare providers.
And we've spoken about this for at least 1 year, that as we go forward, I think everyone on this dais is very, very dedicated to keeping our taxes as low as we possibly can. So we're all interested in that. But there are times when there's a need to look at the future and do whatever we need to do to make sure that Southington is fiscally straight and healthy. So we're at the very beginning of the process of our budgets, and we will work very hard to do the best we can. I'm absolutely sure of that on both sides of the aisle. So anything else from self-insurance?
Just a question
Yeah.
for Tom. So Tom, there must be a policy, right, for the
Yes. Yes, we have a for the fund balance?
Yeah.
Yes, we have a policy for the self-insurance fund balance. And that's why last year we recommended to draw down $1 million. Board of Finance actually took it a step further and drew upon another $400,000. Right. And that might be another discussion that comes up this year. And I will say there's valid reasons to both sides of that argument.
And the consultant gives you I guess the consultant is the one that gives the recommendations of what he believes you should.
Yeah, and I think the committee, we certainly take guidance from the consultant, but the committee also looks at the metrics as to where the fund balance is as compared to where it should be. And that's reviewed, I'm not going to say every meeting, but at least 3 or 4 times a year, we're looking at that fund balance policy.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, of
I
course.
would like to, and I did talk to Tom about this separately, but I definitely want to have this discussion on the dais. I personally think that drawing the fund balance down more is necessary. We're talking about a fund balance of over 30% of the budget.
That's right.
And that's a huge number. And I think that we should look, as we start to get a little bit closer in some of the numbers for this year start to become more clear as we approach the budget season. I'd like to look at, what is the fund balance? What should the fund balance be? Is our current policy sound? And is it comparable to, what other municipalities are doing who have a self-insurance plan? And, if we are at the high end of our fund balance, that means we are taking money from the taxpayers and holding it in reserve. And if that reserve is higher than it needs to be, let's not take so much from the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's return that to the taxpayers.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So thank you guys for bringing that up. So I actually spoke to the finance director about that as well. And to my understanding, the fund balance policy that we have there, I guess there's certain parts that kind of contradict each other. And we also have to keep in mind of the IBNR, which stands for the incurred but not reported yet, which based on, I guess, the calculations is usually $2 million. So I guess short is that I guess the policy states something about 25%. So I guess if we're at 30%, but then we may have a $2 million of the IBNR calculation, we're getting close to that $10 million mark. So again, I just don't know how much more again, we could be taking out of that until we start, again, there's not much wiggle room. And after COVID, we've seen that a lot of these, our budget's been way off, because people have been holding off on doing procedures and stuff. So again, I think COVID has thrown a whole curveball on this, but it's obviously alarming when you see something go up 25%.
We all set?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. Item C, the Library Building Committee. Jim?
Yes, Madam Chair, we met last Wednesday, the 4th. We were advised at that meeting that DRA, the architect, had completed their design, and schematic design was complete. At that time, they turned over all of the final drawings for the design of the library to Whiting Turner, our building manager. And Whiting Turner will now review those drawings and review the estimates for accuracy and give us a final number on the 25th. Our next meeting was scheduled for the 18th, but we decided that they wouldn't have the information ready by then, so we moved for a special meeting on the 25th. We also learned that through some fancy finance work, I guess I'll call it, that we are approximately $125,000 within the 17.9 on the budget, and it takes into consideration several expectations around flooring, fixtures, and donations. But it looks like we're going to be close to the budget, unless when these estimates go out, they come back very different. So that's the latest on the Library Building Committee.
Great. Any questions?
Just with what the proposal is, what is the square footage, what is the total square footage for the new library? If I know you said you're going to review everything final, but if you move forward with that, what would be the total square footage?
We haven't changed.
I think it's right around 24.
24,
Right around
yes.
24, I believe.
Yeah, so we haven't changed the square footage, and we also haven't given up a lot of the options. It looked like we were going to.
Okay.
But we made some changes in quality and some design changes, and we're pretty close to what we had originally planned.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Item D is Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had our meeting last Wednesday, January 4th. A couple of items to note. Mr. Chaplinsky brought it up to the Chief of Police and the Town Manager to look into possibly the Department of Transportation adding a "Don't Block the Box" for the new Dunkin' Donuts was put up fast and furiously in downtown Plantsville. I know there are some concerns that there could be some traffic issues, especially when they first open. I have a lot of confidence in the Planning and Zoning Commission that approved that. I know there is a 13 or a 16 car queue, so the majority of the cars will be inside the parking lot, but we know how often busy that these donut shops are in the morning. So if we're able to put the "Don't Block the Box," it may dissuade some of the traffic issues that are there. The DOT did respond. They wanted to wait until the business opens. From what I was told, it's going to open in about a week, maybe 2. So they want to wait a couple of weeks to see how things are going, and if it's bad, then the DOT will consider putting a "Don't Block the Box." So more to follow on that. The chief will follow up.
Just to add to that, so one of the things the chief said, which is a big improvement, is now it's one way in, go around the
That's right.
building, and one way out. So
That's right.
the chief felt confident that would actually improve some of what was happening over there.
And no indoor dining, it's walk-up only, so the lion's share of the folks will use the drive-through or order ahead on the app, and you can park quickly, grab your items, and then hit the road. So more to follow. We won't know until we know, so when they do open, hopefully it's not too bad. The next item that I have to discuss is with regards to the Recreation Park pool. Mrs. Turnquist reported that the demolition of the concrete decking was scheduled to start in the next month or so. The weather's been cooperative, so they're going to be doing some work up there now. Mrs. Turnquist also reported that 20 new bleachers were purchased as part of the park's master plan. That's good busy work for the highway department. So they're putting those together now, and once the weather is better, some of the most damaged bleachers throughout the town will be replaced with some new ones, which is good news. I know that Councilman Perry has been questioning with regards to the Route 10 and 322 bridge. Unfortunately, the DOT is not ready to present the traffic information. They needed a couple of more weeks. We made it very clear to them that the new traffic counts should have happened while school was in session and not during the winter break or the Thanksgiving break. So they were given those orders. So we'll have to wait to see what happens with the results for that. Do you have a question, Jack?
Yeah, so I guess they already had a traffic study and they sent it to us, and all we asked for them to bring it into layman terms. So if they already have the data, why can't they just present it?
Great
Again,
question.
I just think that the council and the town, they presented it to us. I think we need to hold the state accountable to do the project the right way and make sure that it's not gonna impede on any of our lives.
Right.
You know, because again, adding another light in our town, I don't think is what we need.
Okay, well, you know, the Department of Transportation unfortunately takes up a lot of our public works meetings.
Yeah.
We're constantly waiting for the downtown Plantsville, for, you know, now they're involved in the trail, so the DOT is still, they need a little jump start.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think they committed to redoing some traffic
Again,
counts, right? So I think that's what they're.
Apparently the traffic, the original one that came through happened in
Oh,
the summer.
I think actually you, Jack, were the one who requested and said that the data, we should refresh the data. So they are redoing the data. Now, we did ask them to make sure that it was done, you know, when schools are open, when everybody's back to work. So that's kind of what's been holding up a little bit the new data, is that we were insisting that we get new counts done.
We thought we'd have it by now, but we're waiting. We're waiting for a lot of items. Mr. Arndt from the Water Department mentioned and wanted to get the word out that they're looking for a staff member. There's a posting for a maintainer one, so if someone has some plumbing background, they're looking for, the Southington Water Department is hiring. And the Board of Finance is going to be getting the recommendation that we made for the Recreation Park pool halls. So hopefully at our next meeting, actually not our next meeting, but the first meeting in February, I'll have more to report on that. The pool house was, we voted on it at our meeting, and the Board of Finance will look into it, and then it comes here next.
It'll be the next council meeting. Board of
Will
Finance,
be?
Board of Finance
Oh.
is this Wednesday. I'm going
Okay.
to them with that, and you'll see you at the next council meeting.
So it'll be the next council meeting. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Any other questions?
Further questions?
Just wanted to mention I had spoken with Annette Turnquist also. The work that's been done at the animal control facility is
Great.
just great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Parking
so-
lot, I can't wait till it's lined, and
Oh, it's
my
just-
boys had games there, and it was
Right at the field, right?
brutal.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I'm just a little disappointed the trees had to come down,
Right.
because that was the only
I
shade.
think they're gonna put some more.
Yeah, they are adding more,
Yeah.
but the height of the other trees gave at least some folks some
Some shade.
shade, and a July afternoon, we're roasting there, but
But it really, I mean, what
Yeah.
a difference.
Yep,
being
looks
up
great.
there
Good
and,
stuff going on at our animal control area,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Volunteers are coming out, the dogs are getting.
and it makes it a lot easier to bring the dogs in and out.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so
Madam
just a
Chair.
thank you
Thank
to
you,
them.
Val, for
Yeah.
your
Val.
devotion to them very much. Thank you, Mr. Del Santo. Let's move on. Item E, the Southington roof. I'm going to let
Yeah,
Mr.
very,
Palmieri.
very brief, but again, just to update everyone.
Yep.
We met on Thursday, December 15th, and basically the purpose was to review the results from the RFP for the roof design, our recommendation, and we decided to move forward with Hibbard and Rosa Architects, LLC, for the price of $24,800. This was the low bidder, and they've already done work for us at the high school on the first phase of the roof replacement, so it's a no-brainer almost.
Very good.
Question.
Yeah,
Madam
sure.
Chris, which roof was it?
What do you mean?
That you had, what was the quote for, the
This-
RFP?
This is the partial roof replacement, Southington High School.
High school.
Yeah, Southington High
Just-
School.
Just curious,
part.
is there a reason why we don't use Easy IQ for this? Because we use Easy IQ for roofs for our other buildings in
Because
town.
we get state reimbursement on this one.
So we can't use Easy IQ for state reimbursement?
I mean, you can't because it's a state reimbursement. That's my understanding on that one. There's a special, it's a process that Pete has to go through, and one of them is the full bidding process.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were the low bid. The next bid underneath them was $28,300. So,
Yeah, and they have a track record with
Yeah.
us, so we.
And it's important, they did the other one, right?
right.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's important because they left,
And they were the
they
low
left
bid.
halfway
and they
through,
were
so.
the low bid, yeah.
They knew where.
They knew where to start from.
They drew a line. Spray paint.
Dangle it, carrot.
Very good. Any other questions? Let's move on to the town the town manager's report, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's almost 9 o'clock, okay. So with that being said, I'd like to reintroduce to you, you've met her many times, our Director of Revenue and Collection, Teresa Babin. She's going to come with a recommendation on tax audits. So Teresa, floor is yours.
Good evening. My contacts are starting to stick to my eyeballs, so I'm going to try and make this quick. Hi, my name's Teresa Babin. I am the Director of Assessment and Revenue. I started in 2018, and 6 months after I started, it was time to go out to bid for reval. So I hit the ground running, and I had been busy with that. And then after reval, there was COVID. And I did have a plan to start a personal property audit program for the town of Southington. We have real estate that gets revalued every 5 years per state statute. We have motor vehicle taxes where the values are provided, most of them are provided to us by the state of Connecticut based on market value. The personal property aspect of the taxation here in Southington in the state of Connecticut it's a self-reporting mechanism, so the business owners have to report what assets they have for personal property. And there's no real mechanism in Southington, at least, for us to audit that. Previous to my start here, there had been some sort of audit program where they would randomly pick 5 or 10 accounts and hire that out, and those accounts would be audited. But it has been so long that we've done that, and so many new businesses have started that I feel it would be in Southington's best interest to try and get an even playing field. And I have been working with Tax Management Associates. They have been kind and patient as we've struggled with one thing after another. But I feel that this is the right time to start this. And I do have 2 gentlemen here with me. I have Jay Taranto Jr. and Ryan Hunter from Tax Management Associates, and they are going to be here to explain a little bit about the company, what they do, how they plan on dealing with this issue, and we're going to be here for questions.
Is there any other documentation other than what the council already has that you want them to see?
Yeah,
That's it? Okay, good.
Does everyone have a copy? Or
Yes.
has-
We do.
Great. Well, thank you, council members and town manager, for allowing us to come here and talk to you and answer any questions you may have. As Ms. Babin had said, we've been working with her for the past almost 3 years in communication about instituting a personal property audit program here in the town of Southington. Tax Management Associates has been conducting audits for over 40 years across the country. We are the largest firm that provides this service. We've been working here in the state of Connecticut for well over 20 years and have conducted well over 25 programs for various cities and towns here in Connecticut that have proven very beneficial to the town from an equity standpoint. And when we talk about equity, that's basically trying to ensure that every taxpayer is paying their fair share for what they have at their property via real estate, personal property, or other taxes that are instituted. TMA has done approximately about 9,000 audits here in the state of Connecticut. And with that history, we are finding close to 50% discovery rate. So that means for every 10 audits we do, we actually find a discovery or a discrepancy of what's being reported to the assessor's office and what is actually at the site of the commercial property. So that's a pretty substantial amount of inaccuracies that could be, here in the town, and that's just been our history. That's just not us pulling numbers, from the sky. So it is, as Ms. Babin had said, it might be a worthwhile program for the town of Southington to consider. As part of the equity program, there's always a byproduct, and in our estimates, we anticipate that we will uncover about $78 million of discovered value, which translates into approximately $2 million of tax revenue that we will bring it back into the town of Southington over we're anticipating this take about a 3-year program. So when you look at that revenue, that's something that's actually being missed, every year. So not only $1 million, it's also $2 million in cashing each and every year, and a program that, again, we think is very worthwhile into investigating. We've done a number of communities, as I said, around you. We're currently doing a program in Berlin right now. We just finished one in New Britain, South Windsor, various programs that have proven hugely successful. And it's a standard procedure in the assessing industry.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what is the procedure? How do you handle our commercial residents in that situation?
So, sure, yeah, obviously, we set up a program, and what you have approximately 400 accounts that we would anticipate doing an audit on, 400 commercial accounts, and we would spread that out roughly evenly over a 3-year program. What we don't like to do from a public relations perspective is single out any type of taxpayer. So we typically break our audits out into various categories, and that's by size of assessment. And we take an equal distribution of each size each year and conduct our audits. But over the 3-year period, every commercial property will be audited as part of the program. That way, just like a revaluation, every single real estate property is valued over a program. We're anticipating doing the same for a personal property program. So in regards to the process, we sit with the assessor's office, we develop our literature, we send each taxpayer a notice saying that this year you've been selected to be audited by the assessor's office, and that TMA, who's representing and working with the assessor's office, will be conducting that audit. We will then work with the associate business, and typically it's an accountant or somebody that handles the books that will capture that asset list, and we will set up an appointment to go on site and validate all the information that they're reporting to the town, as well as all the other information that they have on their asset list. As part of that, we also do an inspection of the commercial property to validate what they're reporting is actually there. And this is between those two functions, the list validation and reconciliation and the inspection. This is typically where we find that they're either accurate. There are some businesses that could be overstating assets as well. This is where we uncover, most of our discoveries. We then work with the assessors to say, okay, this is what we found on this property. We send the property a notice saying that these are the discrepancies that we found, and then we sit and do an exit interview with the taxpayer so that they can anticipate what might be coming down the road in regards to a new tax bill. In addition, TMA, or Tax Management Associates, will also support the town through any type of appeal process. So we just don't hand off the audit, send it to the taxpayer. We then will handle, if anybody appeals it, we will work with the assessor's office and work with them to, go through any appeal process. Typically, an average audit takes anywhere between 30 to 60 days. Generally that's from the first communication to the time we set up the appointment, to the work we conduct, and then sitting with the taxpayer and finalizing that individual audit.
Okay, so you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Okay. Chris, I
Anything
saw your
else that
hand up.
Yes, I have a couple questions. So first of all, you said between 30 to 60 days per audit. So is the 137 audits per year, which is what you're projecting?
That's
Is
correct.
that a realistic
Yes.
goal that you feel?
That's a goal, yeah. We have a staff of about 150 people.
Okay.
And 60 to 70 auditors on staff that we assign different various sizes. But we're not continuously working on each audit during
Right.
that 30, 60
You
days.
get the balls.
It's because of the lapse and setting up the scheduling and then completing the audit. But yes.
So would there be dedicated employees of yours for Southington? Because like you said, and how many people would you be?
Typically, we would anticipate 4 to 5 auditors
Okay.
working on the project
Okay.
full-time.
You mentioned also over a 3-year period. Is that typical for most communities that you work with?
It's typical for most, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it does carry on or lag over to an additional year, but we like to at least set a standard so that we have a goal, and the assessors are now, obviously, depending on the workload that the assessors can handle, we can cater that to their liking too, because there's busier times during the year that they're involved with other responsibilities that we just need to cater our program. But we work closely with the assessor's office to set that expectation of a program and what they can handle and anticipate.
Okay, and then one final question. You're mentioning a return on investment either over the 3-year program or annually of 5.32 to 1, so I assume that's through things you discover through your audits
That's
that,
correct.
that would increase the tax base for.
That's correct, yeah. As a company, we've done close to 300,000 audits across the country. So we know typically what an average discovery is for a certain size of property. And we even narrow that down, this information that we're providing on even the audits that we've conducted in Connecticut. We know what a typical business of this size will uncover in a discovery. And especially here in Southington, where you have not had a full program. You've done maybe 5 to 10 audits a year, but that's over numerous years. You haven't done a full program like you've done full revaluations. We're anticipating very good results in discoveries. And it's not to say that it's fraud, it's just discrepancies that happen over time. There's different accountants that come on board with various businesses that are just not familiar with some of the typical assets that they need to, need to report to the individual jurisdiction. So it's a lot of variables, and that's typically, what we find over that period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Bill?
I just have a couple questions about your contingency model, and it's not, your business model is great, I'm not knocking your business model, but, so you guys are basically collecting at an 18.78% contingency, is that what it is, if you do the math here? So for every dollar of taxes, you're getting 18 cents, basically, right?
Yeah,
That's the math.
it's roughly about 35% of the revenue. Now, we take on all the responsibility, okay, up front. You do not pay us until that tax bill has been sent out, and that tax bill has been paid by the taxpayer. Then we disperse the payment and split, between the town and TMA. So we could conduct audits, for the first year and a half without incurring any revenue. So we take on all that risk up front. This is a good way, we just know over time that we can cover our costs when we do an entire program and not just selective properties.
So part of that, though, is the 25% penalty, which I understand that's mandatory by the state, that's not permissive. So if you do discover undeclared money, there's a state penalty of 25%, correct? But you guys are collecting on that 25% penalty too, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay,
That's
now
part
is
of
that
the-
something that would be waivable? I mean, that's money that I'd rather see go back to the actual town. Is that, negotiable term, or what is that?
Well, that's typically what the town can impose on a taxpayer. That would be up to the town on what they want to, that's not just our fee, we're just fitting that into our estimation model, but it's up to the town to distinguish what percentage they want to tax the lien or the taxpayer on for misinformation over a period of time. I believe you can go back, is it current plus 3 years? Current plus 2 years. So if there's a taxpayer, we don't audit just one single year. We go back 3 years. So there's a lot of taxpayers, in essence, that are in arrears over that period of time, and that's when that.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to
penalties-
get at. A large proportion of the contingency is driven by that 25% penalty, which, I didn't know it was that large, until I was reading this. I guess my other question is that, so one, this is permissive. We don't have to elect into this new policy, right? This is something we're going to choose to do as a matter of policy. So, I'm just picturing these business owners out here and I read the power given by the state to the assessor. So the assessor can notice the audit, right? So you notice it for certified mail, something like that. So you guys are going to take on the notice requirement, right?
Correct.
Now, I look the next step, and basically it's kind of almost like a deposition or a subpoena. You have to bring certain documents to the assessor. But what you're saying is that you guys actually do a field inspection.
Yes,
You'll
do
go
it
into the
in
field
addition
on site.
to validating their records, yes.
Now, if we chose to elect this policy without using your guys' services, would the assessor and town employees be doing field audits, or would they be going to the assessor's office in a conference room, bringing their accountant, their certified, whatever it is? I mean, how do you guys, I mean, you guys have experience with across the country and in Connecticut.
Sure.
But do some people show up and say, no, you're not coming on site? Show me where your authority is to come on site.
Right, the assessors have subpoena authority.
The assessors
to
do,
request.
right, the
That's correct.
assessors do.
And us, on behalf of working with the town as a subcontractor, we also have that. Now, anyone could deny us, but at that point, that's up to the assessor to determine what they actually have. Is what's reporting accurate, or is what they're not allowing us to visualize and/or see is
So do you
is that-
find in your experience there's a lot of voluntary compliance with field audits and stuff like that, or is it more just, I mean, I'm just trying to understand the guy that owns, all right, forget about the large corporation, fine. They have 7 accountants, they're gonna show up, they're on field site, whatever, see whatever you want.
Right.
But I'm trying to picture the guy that doesn't have a professional tax team right there available for the field audit. I mean, how do you guys see that interaction playing with someone who's never been through one of these audits before, just finished a workers' comp audit or whatever it is, and now we have the town of Sullyton coming in and saying, hey, we're coming to your business, I wanna see all your books and records, and if you don't, you're in big trouble, and there's a 25% penalty if you're wrong on anything you did. I mean, how do you see taxpayers in your experience in Connecticut reacting to that?
Sure. So first of all, we're not we typically audit or get involved with any commercial property that has a true market value of $50,000 or up. So we're typically dealing with people who are experienced or that know about an audit. The other thing that typically happens too is we're not always actually just doing the audit here. A lot of times, a business, if you have a Walmart in town, we're not actually going to the Walmart here. We're flying to their corporate headquarters and actually meeting and sitting with their financial accountants in regards to, conducting that audit. But as far as the mom and pops, I mean, they know what they're reporting, and we're there to validate whether or not the assets that they're submitting to the town of Southington are either accurate or not.
Yeah, I just see a gap between the professional ability of, and listen, $50,000 is not a lot of money in personal property if you really think about it. You can have an attorney's office that has furniture, that has computers, copiers, things like that. You can get to $50,000 real quick. So I don't want the public to think that we're not going, I mean, the mom and pops are going to be impacted by this. Not all of them, but I mean, I don't think $50,000 as a threshold is that significant for personal property. That's just my concern, is the people that don't have the professional staffing to respond to an audit like this. If you've never been through a workers' compensation audit, Jack, you definitely have.
Yep.
It is onerous. And and I don't want now Sullyton taxpayers, you just got out of your workers' comp audit, now boom, here's your Sullyton personal property tax audit. So I would like to see something for the taxpayers. One, maybe we don't do it right now, maybe we say, hey, we'll see you in a year from now. Everybody, maybe some educational resources. I know maybe you might want to educate this class, but they are going to be the ones that are going to feel the burden on this issue. And I think it's unfair to them. That's just what I'm getting at here. And again, no disrespect for your company. I think what you guys do is incredible. Your business model is great. But it's these people that I want to look out for, because they don't have the staffing, the resources.
Yep. Sure. I'm sorry.
So I can tell you the mom and pops, the true mom and pops in the town of Southington, they are reporting assets like $2,000, $4,000. There's no way a $50,000 threshold is going to affect the mom and pops here in town. A second point that I wanted to make is that there are many companies that are reporting every paperclip, and there are some companies that just aren't. And if you want to talk about fair, that's the inequity that we're trying to rectify with this program, to make sure that all of the same types of companies are audited and held to the same types of standards, so that they are paying the taxes on the same equipment as their competitor or a sister company down the street. We are trying to make sure that the proper proportion of taxes are paid by not just the residents but the businesses, and then within the business community, make sure that if you have $50,000 in assets, those assets are being reported, and that everybody is paying their fair share. We're not picking on anybody. We're just trying to true up our personal property database so that we can continue to get the income from that in future years. And in all honesty, we have waited 3.5 to 4 years now to start this, and I think that it's only doing the assessor's office, it's doing us a disfavor, and I think it's also doing the town a disfavor in general, because you don't want to talk to a resident who's unemployed and trying to, get their monthly mortgage payment made when you have these big companies in town, some not so big companies, but they are not paying their fair share, and it's not because they're trying to get away with it. There are companies that call our office during personal property declaration season, and they say to me, well, the IRS lets us write off these assets because they're a certain amount of years old. They think they can do the same thing with municipal taxes, and you can't. They bottom out at 30% depreciation. So there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to town taxes, and there are some people that may get it right, but there are also some people that do not. And we just want to hold everybody accountable to the same level.
So Teresa, that's a great point you just made, and that really is the alternative to this vendor, is what you just said. So this is how the IRS audits, right? The IRS looks at your return against your zip code, your business, whatever it is, and they look at your deductions and everything else versus your competitors, essentially is what they do. So what you're saying is that we do have that ability. What you're saying, you're talking about the equity of, people that sell tires left and right on both sides of Main Street, okay? So we do have the personal property declarations between those two companies. So you could see if there's a major disparity between one and the other and spot audit. I mean, I don't understand why we couldn't spot audit. Why would we audit the person who you just said is declaring every paperclip? Why waste the time? Why put them through it? Why do it? Spot audit based on the information we have in our universe. That's how the IRS audits. I mean, I don't know why it's not that difficult of a concept.
A spot audit would be picking on one company over another. This audit program is broad, and it's very comprehensive, and I think that it's going to give you the most accurate data. First of all, I don't have the staff to do these audits on a daily, monthly. I mean, if you want to come and spend a day in the office and see what we do, there's no way that I would have the staff to go ahead and do what you're proposing. I know when you say spot audit, it makes it sound like it's not that often, but we just cannot do that. And I choose to work with a professional team, a professional company that has history in the state of Connecticut. I have reached out to towns and cities that they have done work with, and I have heard nothing but wonderful things. They sit with the taxpayer at the end and go over everything, and the taxpayer always has the ability to go to the Board of Assessment Appeals, and then they can take it to Superior Court if there's a continued problem. But I think the spot auditing it's not very efficient, and it's not going to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Which is, I guess, so because this is the policy decision we have to make either tonight or tomorrow. What is the policy decision? What do we want to collect the most amount of revenue we can for the town of Southington, or?
No, that's not the ultimate goal. I mean, yeah, anything we get is going to be great for the town of Southington. But I want to make sure that when I look at a personal property file, the assets that are, and also let's be clear, when I ask companies to provide me with a detailed asset list, maybe 30% of them comply. So they put $50,000 on a line, and I have no idea what that is made up of. I don't know if they're declaring chairs and tables and computers, or if they're, I have no idea what it is. So it makes it very difficult for me to do the right thing and to do a good job for the town of Southington if I'm not getting the information that I need from these companies. So the way they do it is very professional, and it's effective and efficient, and I just think it's the best way to go for Southington.
I'm glad you mentioned the appeal, because that was a question that I had about, is there an appeal process if there's felt a discrepancy?
Absolutely. Board of Assessment Appeals is going to be their first, if they can't come to any kind of agreement with the auditors, which I've heard from other towns that does not happen all too often. But if they have come to an impasse, they can definitely go to Board of Assessment Appeals, and after the board takes action, if it's still not to the company's liking, they can take the matter to Superior Court.
Madam Chair.
I have one more question, and this is for the vendors, sorry. So I just have a kind of a curiosity question. Okay, so you send the certified letter, now you have to appear and you have to produce whatever the documents are. Your CPA is gonna help, you're gonna prepare it. So what if you guys have a disagreement? You say, no, this isn't sufficient, we wanted X, you produce this. Who handles that dispute right there? I mean, in order for you to deposition, you call the judge up, right? Who handles the dispute here? You can't go to the assessor, right? What do you do?
So we try to do the best job, with the information that we're provided. We realize that we give them typically a list of the various documents that we want, but there's numerous occasions where we don't get it. We can only do the best job we can with the information we're provided. And then as well as that inspection, that also helps us validate what is actually, at the site. So a lot of it is document related, but a lot of it is visual and, again, reconciling against what they're reporting to the town as opposed to what's actually there and what they actually have as assets on site.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I got a quick question. So is it every business that's reporting 50,000 over in assets that you guys would be auditing?
It's assessment here in Connecticut's at 70%.
I
35 in assessment and above that we typically get involved with.
So is it?
Now, the assessor may choose to give us additional accounts to, whatever amount they want us to do that they may feel should be audited.
So my question to you is that every business that hits that threshold, you guys are going to go and audit?
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess, again, I own a business in town. I have, my uncle's a CPA by trade. I feel very confident in everything I do, but I see this that, again, we're hiring a firm to go and audit every business in our town. And my phone is going off right now with people going, who reimburses them when you find nothing and they spend all these hours? It's kind of biased, and again, I whatever the council decides, I'm fine with, but again, it just kind of, we're opening up, we're auditing our whole town and all of our businesses. So, just sends, I think, a wrong message to the community.
Thank you, Jeff.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I guess for Teresa, right now, the process for all the businesses in town is it's voluntary, right? So they receive, is it annual, right?
Yes.
They receive a form and they have to fill out. So that's I understand what both Bill and Jack are saying, but what you're saying is this is going to level the playing field.
Right.
Right? I mean, this is basically, rather than a voluntary, you fill out this form, and you're dependent that they're being accurate, they're being truthful.
Yeah.
We hope they're being truthful.
Right.
And some of them might be stating, they, so I think what this is going to do is it's going to level the playing field, and it's going to bring equity into the process of, what people have, what businesses have, what is it worth. I understand the piece that maybe they don't have the staff, but I would think that you would help them to some degree, right? If you, what documents they would need to get and things like that, you would give them a list of things. So some of the smaller businesses they don't have a big staff.
Right.
So, I kind of see it as leveling the playing field, and.
It's not voluntary.
This is Matt.
Well, it's voluntary
It's
now.
not voluntary.
It's
not
voluntary now.
There's a state statute says you have to declare your stuff. It's not voluntary.
Well,
They were just not, there's an
right,
enforcement mechanism to it, and there's penalties. They're just not being enforced. It's not voluntary. This isn't I don't feel, who would want to do that? Who would want to go through every computer, every laptop, everything? No, you have to do it. There's a state law that says they have to do it. It's just
Right, for
not
the
being
town.
done. Correct. You have to do this.
But
This
it's
isn't
just being
voluntary.
done at their.
But no, to say it's a voluntary is a misnomer. It's not voluntary. There's a state statute says you have to produce this stuff.
Do you know if businesses don't do it?
Oh, yeah. There's about 475 businesses that do not report.
And what happens to them?
They, by statute, the assessor has the ability to use their best judgment and put an amount down, and then assess a 25% penalty. And it's not a, you may assess a 25% penalty, the assessor shall.
That's what the state statute says.
Yes.
And so when you send those notices out, how much is collected on that? Do they pay those penalties?
Yeah.
Is it goes,
I mean,
tax
yeah,
bill.
they pay them.
It's a tax bill.
And we have tried to, when I came on board, we started with an outreach program to the businesses, especially the new businesses that were coming on board. We prepared a welcome letter, and we prepared, get ready, because, October 1st is when the personal property declaration season is, and this is what we're looking for. If you have any questions, please reach out. I mean, we have done a lot in terms of outreach for the businesses. My office works a lot with Lou Perillo in the Economic Development Office. When there's a new business coming in town, we try to get out to the property. We try to warn them when the tax bills are coming, whether it's real estate or personal property. We try to open that dialogue, have that line of communication open, so that if there are any questions, they can call. But there still seem to be a lot of businesses that do not file.
Anybody?
I have a question.
Oh, hang on
sorry,
one
go
second.
ahead, Paul.
I'm gonna
Go ahead,
recognize
Paul. Sure,
and
of
then,
course.
and then you, Mike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe, I have a few questions. Teresa, I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer this or if Mark is, but you mentioned Lou Perillo. Does the Economic Development Coordinator, does he support this audit? Does he think this is a good idea?
I don't want to speak for him and specifically, but I did speak to Lou this morning, and just to let him know that this was coming down the pike, and he said, okay.
I spoke with him also, and he said,
Okay.
You mentioned, Teresa, that there are 475, roughly.
That's a rough
Roughly,
estimate. And there's only 2,300 personal property accounts.
that's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
you. So there's 2,300 personal property accounts in the town of Southington.
Mhm.
You're saying that about 475 don't report. You also, in the spreadsheet here from Task Management Associates, it says that there's 412 that would be within the scope of the audit,
Mhm.
right? So the other, whatever it is, 1,800 or plus
Yep.
are not going to be part of the audit. I'm assuming that's because they're small. They're in the category, they're in category S, 0 to 49,000 in assets. So, okay, can you give me an idea, maybe for the tax management team, how much time does it take? Let's talk about just category A, because there's 331 out of 412. These are our smallest businesses that would qualify under your proposal to be audited. How much time, can you give me an idea, how much of their time does it take to do an audit with you? Are we talking about 3 hours, or are we talking about 30 hours, or 300 hours?
I mean, roughly, I would say anywhere between 1 to 3 hours, depending on, the smaller businesses, I would say no more than an hour. I mean, typically they're, because of the asset list, they're not extensive like you would a corporation that is
big
$1 million.
box store.
Right.
Okay.
That we're going through, pages and pages of assets, but I
Less
would
than
say
5 hours
no
of
more
it.
than an hour of
Is that
time.
1 hour of time with you, or is that 1 hour of prep time?
That would be 1 hour of time with us typically. Prep time, a lot of the information is what they actually report on their income taxes, to the state and the federal as well. So a lot of times that information is already readily available there.
Okay.
And again, realizing that some of them, Councilman, you had mentioned, some of them may not have, all the information that we require. And again, we can only do the best we can with what the information they can provide.
So roughly 1 to 5 hours of their time
I would
in
say,
total
yeah, that would be
each.
maximum
Okay.
on the smaller
I have
properties.
a quick question. So that sparked my interest, what you just said. So I understand you would be doing a floor-to-book search and a book-to-floor, right?
Correct.
And you're also looking at the federal tax returns?
That's part of, what they provide to federal tax returns.
Like
as far as
depreciation schedules?
depreciation
Right,
of their
I'm
assets.
familiar. So this would be tax returns, federal and state, and also inventory observations?
Correct.
Are you talking the whole tax return, or just the depreciation part, the capital, the
Just the
assets?
Yeah, not the entire.
So not
no,
the
just-
full- not the
just
full
what
tax
they're
return.
reporting for depreciation capital.
Okay.
Reimbursements.
My last question is for Teresa. Did we put this out to bid? How
No,
many
we did not
vendors have we
put it out
spoken
to
to? Have we gotten quotes from?
No, we did not put it out to bid. We haven't gotten quotes from anybody.
So this proposal that's before us, is this a binding
We got
proposal?
nobody.
So, there's cooperative purchasing in the state of Connecticut where you can have like-minded cities or towns that went through this process already. And I think there's been about 15 or so piggyback contracts where Stratford was the very first contract that I got. I think it was like 13 years ago. And they went out to bid, did the full process, and then a lot of places like Danbury or West Haven, New Haven, they went out to bid. We were the only company that can bid on it at this, to do everyone. South Windsor just went out to bid. They got no bids. And they went through the whole process, did all the grading, had everybody try to bid, and we've had people bid in, but we try to do everybody within a town over a certain threshold instead of just doing a small amount. So you guys can go out to bid, and it can be the same outcome as what New Haven just did, and no one will bid. Or if everybody bids, we'll still be here to bid. But.
So are you saying, are there other firms like yours in the state that do the same type of thing? Or are you saying that there's no firms out there that are doing it?
We know of two other smaller firms that typically that can handle 5 to 10 audits, maybe a year. We're not aware of any other firm that can do an entire city and/or town over a short period of time like this. And as Ryan had mentioned, any time that has happened for a town or city to conduct a full program, we've been the only bidder that has provided a proposal.
And what is it about your firm that gives you the advantage to be able to do an entire municipality like ours versus some of the others?
I think it's just the size, the amount of auditors and the experience and depth. As I said, we've been doing this for well over 40 years across the country, and we've built an expertise in this field, and we only specialize in personal property audits, just like other companies just specialize in property revaluations that you'll be going out to bid in the next year or two. I think you're at 2025 on the revaluation side.
Thank you. Appreciate you answering the questions.
Thank you. Mike, you've been very
Thank you,
patient.
Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead.
So just one quick question, and it's very subjective. I'm not sure you can even answer it. But when you meet with these folks, how often are you seeing, what's the disparity in what they self-report versus what's uncovered by your audit? Do you have a number? I'm sure you have some analytics that you follow. And it's a two-part question. The second part is, what if folks are over-reporting? Probably doesn't happen too much, but if it does, will they get refunded? How does that all work?
So typically, our history is in the state of Connecticut is actually 47% discovery. So again, for roughly just say 50%. So for every 10 audits we're doing, we're finding a discovery 5 out of those 10 audits that we're typically doing. That's just generally our history.
Okay.
And it's specifically here in the state of Connecticut. In regards to somebody that might have been overstating what they actually had because some of the items might be fully depreciated and yet that should have dropped off their asset list, then a new tax bill will get sent out in regards to those findings as well when the time comes to properly assess that property.
Yeah, they would get a correction to their bill for the current year and 2 back.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead,
One
Tom.
more, sorry to keep asking.
the chair, yeah.
But for one of these big corporations that we have on Main Street or Queen Street, if you get a personal property tax report from a Big Four accounting firm, are you still going in and doing an audit? Or are you measuring the risk of all of your accounts and saying, I've got these property reports from Big Four accounting firms, and I've got these over here that were self-reported. Does that play into your decision, or are you just, as Mr. Perry alluded to, are you just going across the board with no rhyme or reason, you're just saying, I'm going to hit everybody?
Yeah, as part of a program, we audit each individual.
Regardless of what
Yes.
what
And
brand
believe it or
is
not,
on
most
the signature.
corporations of some substantial size are very well aware of us. We've probably audited them in some fashion over the last 40 years in one way or another, or in some other community that we've done here in the state of Connecticut. So most of the time, we don't typically get any pushback when we submit the letters. Very, very rare occasion, because they know that they are subject to audits, but are also very well aware of who we are and how we do it. We don't go in there and try to bully these taxpayers, okay? We try to sit with them, we try to educate them so that in the future, Ms. Babin is getting accurate declarations that are being submitted. So it's not only something that's gonna perform equity, we hope it's a learning lesson for the taxpayers so that in the future, they are properly reporting correctly and therefore keeping equity amongst you.
Well, I do have a little bit of an issue with you using the term equity and fairness and proportionate. You guys are just going out there and saying, this is what the tax code is. It's black and white, and and the businesses are supposed to be following it. You're not creating tax code. So I do somewhat disagree with the way you present it to the public. You're just saying, these are the rules, and we're ensuring that you're following the rules.
That's correct, yes.
Very good. Okay, we've got a lot of questions here.
Very
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead, Chris, and then Jack.
Yeah, very
okay?
quick.
And then can we just end
Teresa,
it? So you have it.
when have we done a comprehensive audit like this, or has it not been done?
Never.
Okay, so you mentioned before that you were doing, the town was doing these spot audits periodically.
Yeah,
from time to
they
time.
pick random 10 accounts per grand list year and audit those.
Okay, and again, this would create that equity and that everyone over the course of 3 years would get an opportunity to be reviewed.
Right.
And potentially, some of them are paying penalties now because they, to your point, they may not know what to report, what not to report. So again, this would give everyone a fair opportunity to be assessed equally.
Yes.
All these 412 businesses.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Jack?
So based on your calculations, just did some quick math, be looking at, based on what you guys usually find, the businesses you'd go and audit would be about a $4,000 per business finding, and then we'd whack them or charge them a 25% penalty of another $1,000. So again, it looks like the penalty is the worst part of this whole thing. So I don't know if maybe trying to educate businesses that maybe aren't, I guess, filing maybe the right way, but again, the 25% penalty, I think, is where most of this revenue is going to be coming from.
I have made phone calls to companies when I don't see their personal property declaration come in, and I will have a conversation with the comptroller and let them know that this is coming due and it really needs to be turned in, and it'll be turned in late. And I explain to them what the problem is, you have a 25% penalty. If you file later, you don't file at all, and then the following year, it doesn't get filed at all. So I don't know how much more education we can do. We have lengthy conversations with businesses. I can't tell you how many times I have made trips to businesses to retrieve documents from them because they can't. I don't know what the issue is, but they can't get them to my office in time. I have to call them and remind them. And again, this is something that my office doesn't have the time to do. But we still try to do it because we realize these businesses are going through it. They're doing what they can. But on the other hand, something needs to get done in order to, I keep wanting to say equitable, Tom, I'm sorry, but.
No,
because
the process. It's the process that you're talking about.
It has to be consistent, and it has to be fair, and this is, in my mind, this is the best way to accomplish that.
Madam Chair, I know you wanted to end it, but can I ask for just one question?
Yes.
I'm sorry. It'll be the last question.
Okay.
Would it change your entire proposal if, for instance, the assessor or the manager said, we want to do this, but we want to do it based upon the year you do your audit, and then move forward from there? Would that change your proposal in any way? Because I think what seems to be, what I'm hearing, seems to be some issues is doing the audit, the people made mistakes in that year of the audit, and then going back. I think that's where I'm hearing a little bit of questions from so if we did the audit and said, okay, here's the year of the audit, we tell them, you should have done this, this, and this, and there's obviously, their taxes go up because the things are on the audit. But is the town in a position not to go back the other 2 years? Because it's 2 years plus the year you audit, right?
Right.
Is that an option? And if that is an option, because I'm sensing some people have a little ill will about that. If that's an option, how does that change your proposal? Not your proposal, your proposal.
Yeah, I mean.
No, not your proposal, their proposal.
No, I understand, but I mean, I'm gonna speak for you for a minute, but I don't know. I'd have to check the statute to see if that's not another, the assessor shall.
Oh, so you may, okay.
I mean, it
May
might
not be
be
an option then.
statutorily driven,
Mhm.
but I've never, I honestly I've never seen another town want to do something like that.
So it may not be an option. Okay.
No, I mean, I'd be happy to look at the statute just to confirm that, but I don't see that being part of our proposal at all.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in and just say thank you very much for coming. We know it's kind of late, and you'll fielded all the questions. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
appreciate your time. Very good. Before we move on to the Board of Finance, Mr. Town Manager, could we please pay the electric bill so we can get
Chair,
heat in this place? Can we please pay it? We're going to take a collection right here.
It stopped at 9 o'clock? All right, we can reset the clock.
Okay.
All right, the next time,
Let's go on.
I'll go as
Let's
quick
go
as
on,
I
please.
can.
Thank you.
The next is the Board of Finance minutes. Obviously, the minutes, the meeting was taken up by the report of the Self-Insurance Committee. That was, probably took up 2/3 of our time. It is a number for which the Board of Finance is very concerned about, obviously, and this board will be concerned about the same way. The other item I want you to look at is page 6. We need to transfer money into human resources legal fees. As you know, we are currently, we settled one contract. We currently are working on 2 other contracts. One of, hopefully will get to you at your next meeting. So we need to put money into legal. And then we did finish off the ARPA project over at Recreation Park for the paving and the drainage. So that money was put in. So those are the major items at the Board of Finance. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, anybody have any questions?
No, I'm good.
No, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, just for the manager, on page 3 of the Board of Finance minutes, section D, I did speak to Mr. Labiniak today, and the second sentence says November was a good month as they were 1,600,000 under budget of 2.1 million. That should read, November was a good month as they were approximately $500,000 under the budget amount of approximately 2.1 million. And maybe just review the video to clarify that.
And I'll speak with the chair.
Yep.
On Wednesday, when we have the Board of Finance.
Very good.
Next item, most of you have seen already. This is our annual request to do the emergency management grant. We usually get about between $20,000 and $25,000. I need the resolution passed to allow Kathy to sign on my behalf, that I can sign the documents for that. That money is used, obviously, to offset emergency management costs. Any questions on that? In that case, we will have an executive session for heart and hypertension. Attorney Sheffy will be for that, and we will have no action outside of executive session.
Thank you. Any questions for the town manager? Hearing none, let's move right on to our town attorney's report.
Madam
Welcome.
Chairperson, I happily have no report to
Well, we're
provide the
happy
council
too.
today.
Welcome,
It's
Lou.
luckily been a quiet 3 weeks between the holidays and whatnot, and not a whole lot that I have to report to anyone. Actually, I have nothing to report to anyone.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
If I may ask the town attorney, there was an FOI complaint that was levied against the town council. I'm not sure how many months ago, but I believe that was dismissed, so maybe at the next meeting, we could just get a quick
Absolutely, I'd be happy to
reading
do
on
that.
Thank you.
And my predecessor, Alex Riccadone, was actually the one that handled all the heavy lifting on that. He did a remarkable job. I know Madam Chairperson attended the first hearing with that regard. It was dismissed with prejudice. I'd be happy to give you a synopsis of that as well. I do know two emails went around summarizing that, but I'd be certainly welcome to share it with not only the council, but the public as well.
Yeah, maybe we could submit that email into the record at our next meeting.
Very good.
I'm sorry, is the town attorney ready to talk about that now?
Well, if we don't have the document.
I think it'd be wise to actually have the details of the dismissal, the date of the initial hearing, and the ultimate determination of dismissal with prejudice.
This is the complaint that Nate Wilson filed, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
Thank you.
Very good. New business, tax refunds.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the tax refunds that are presented in our packet.
No, you should wait.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
We can't skip that.
I am so sorry, all of you have been waiting to speak. Item 10, public communication.
Yes.
Please, come up, give your name and address, and
Skip the
That'd be
agenda.
nice if we were at.
I like the way she thinks.
bold, I know, frozen.
Pat Tavolazzi, 99 Westbrook Road, Plantsville, Connecticut. I'm here with the Disability Commission. I'm a part of the commission. I wanted to speak about the program that was presented to you tonight. The VIF program is a wonderful program. I had the privilege of watching it spoken to us at the police department. I think it was around December. This program is phenomenal. And if there's anyone that has any doubt in their mind, I mean, you have to really rethink this. Just being a nurse, getting someone in the ED, being trauma, anything you can think of in this field, if you have information coming to you prior to someone coming to you, you have a preparation that is much, much better. And I like that it's in real time, it's updated, the people update what they want, they release what they want, they include who they want. So as far as HIPAA's concerned, you're really just gonna give them the information you want them to have. But I'm gonna give you a scenario. I get your little grandma and she's 81 years old and she's probably raging infection, so she's really, really gone off, you know, she's nowhere in her right mind, but somehow she remembers, and she's demented, and she remembers her son Bob. And Bob is the guy of her life. And if we have that information and we can reel her back in, we're not going to be sedating this woman or tying her to a bed or putting mitts on her, which sounds awful, but it happens to keep them safe. We now have information that can keep them safe. And I think when the providers and the first responders are out in the public and an autistic 6'2", 240-pound guy runs out of the house and he's got a toy in his hand or something and he's really out of control, I mean, that could escalate very quickly. And I could see that from a police perspective, but now they know that this young gentleman has this issue and they can have someone there in place. So I just wanted to come up here and say I'm in favor of the VIF program. I think it's phenomenal. I'm excited to jump on board with it, and I'm happy the town is going to consider something like this because I think we need it in real time.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks.
Who's next?
Got it right.
Good evening, Bob Sargent, 25 Birchcrest Drive. Haven't been up here in a while. I would just like to say, and probably most of you do know, our group home on our street has closed. And pretty much every property along the street that was rental, the heroin house, and many others that me and Melissa know, are all gone. We have a normal street now. And I owe a lot of you an apology. I do. I lost my mind up here and nobody wanted to follow me to prison. You know, I mean, it was tough. It was tough. Please be aware, if another one comes to this town, what it can do. It destroyed our street for a decade. Don't let it happen on another street. I understand your hands are tied, but before it comes in, do everything you can to make sure it don't, because no neighborhood deserves that. I don't know what the answer is for these kids or whatever the group home some of them may be, but that wasn't, I can tell you that. That certainly was not the answer. It helped no one, except for a few people get very rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for standing with that whole issue all those years, and thank you very much.
You know, I mean, that was
Rough time.
not something you should have to live with when you're paying a mortgage and raising a family.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Good evening. I'm Mark LaJoy, 372 Kensington Road. Happy New Year. I was just curious what the process is going to be with this tax. When does this get decided if it's going to happen?
Well,
It's a council decision, I would imagine, or?
it is.
It's on for action tonight, but I don't
Okay.
think.
Yeah,
it's
there's
gonna
an
be
awful
voting
lot of
tonight.
discussion still going
We
on,
got
Mark.
729
So I'm just,
questions.
I just want to remind everybody that we spent 2 years of COVID. A lot of our small businesses struggled to survive. I'm not convinced that initiating something like this is in the best interest of the small businesses in our town or the taxpayers. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else?
Susan Zabahansky, 28 Working Street. Happy New Year to everyone. I'd like to thank Councilman Dezak for all the questions he asked the auditors or potential auditors. I agree with Mark. We should be promoting limited government, and that's a huge intrusion on businesses. You're basically slapping a small business owner in the face by saying that you're not declaring every single item or that you're questioning what they're declaring. I agree with maybe workshops. I think it's a great idea. And to say that a small business owner can just take it to, can appeal it, in a case like mine, I would have to hire an attorney, and that's expensive. We're supposed to be pushing limited government where the government's for the people. It's bad enough that small businesses have to pay on a chair for 30 years or a computer. It's highway robbery to begin with, that we have to pay taxes every year on the same property over and over again. So that's one thing. I'd also like to just advise the council that we really need to be very careful in this budget year process. And for all the people who sat here with glazed over eyes as we presented numbers, we really didn't present numbers to the people. Just a 2.5% increase in the budget to the town budget and to the Board of Ed budget would create a 1.8 mil increase in taxes. And for the average taxpayer, say on a $300,000 home, that's about $378. So to some people that may not seem like a lot, but as we all know, everything's gone up as we keep discussing. That whole discussion here was how everything's gone up. Our Board of Ed receives $105 million, little under $105 million of our taxes in this town. It equates to about 70% when you start discussing the capital improvements that the town pays for, plus the Board of Ed budget. It's a lot. And, we hear a lot of things about how our teachers aren't getting paid enough. If they're not getting paid enough, it's because the Board of Ed isn't using their budget wisely, because they get a huge budget. So they really need to be careful. I think we should all be looking into that very carefully, especially when we start talking about we need tennis courts repaired, we need this repaired. Some of these things are needs. Some of them are, state mandated. But I think there's other solutions that can happen for those things as well, and I think we really should be considering those in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council this evening? Okay, I'm going to close public communication. Old business, action on personal property audit.
Madam Chair, could I would imagine someone's going to make a motion to table. Before that happens, I just have one comment or question with regards to it. So the businesses, the 412 businesses that fall under this, I would like to see the businesses, it's all public knowledge, so I want to see the list of the businesses. I think if we saw the businesses, it may give us a better understanding of which ones will be targeted to have the audit done. So that's what my call maybe to Teresa. I would like to see the list of businesses that actually fall under this. And it's, it's public knowledge, and I think anyone could access it. So that was it.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to table. We heard a lot of information tonight, and I have lots of questions.
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Val for the second on this. More discussion on it?
No discussion.
Oh, it's a motion to table, I'm sorry. My brain is freezing. So, all right. So, there's a motion to table, so we will table the matter. Let's call the roll. Thank you.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Del Santo.
Yes.
DiPaolo.
Yes?
Dietzick.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes, the table.
Triano.
Yes, passes unanimously. Action on the report of the Board of Finance as amended.
Motion to approve the amended report as outlined by Councilman Lombardi.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Del Santo.
Yes.
DiPaolo.
Yes?
Dietzick.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Item C, action on the EMPG resolution.
So moved, Madam Chair?
Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's call the roll on this. Any discussion on this? Let's call the roll on this.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Del Santo.
Yes.
DiPaolo.
Yes?
Dietzick.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Moving into new business now, tax refunds. I'm sorry, Jack, I jumped the gun with you.
That's okay, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the tax refunds that are presented in our packet.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Item B, appointments. Number 1, Conservation Commission, 1 member, 4-year term expiring on April 2024.
Madam, do I have a name?
No, we're looking for a table
Motion.
on this, please.
Okay.
Motion to table.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're tabling that. Conservation Commission alternate.
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer the name of Dominic Perone Jr. of 455 Main Street, Southington, Connecticut.
Madam Chair, that's a manager's appointment, but that's a great, I will appoint that person.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
right.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for offering his name.
Any work tonight, or
Councilman.
just gonna keep feeding you?
Item number 3, Fire Commissioner, 1 member, 4-year term expiring November 2026. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Bethany Solori. Again, she is an elementary teacher in town. She has experience on town boards. She's the vice chair of the town's Conservation Commission. She has a history with the Southington Fire Department back to 1989, where she helped with implementing the fire department's computer and dispatch system. And her husband is a retired Southington Fire Department employee, and he held the rank of fire marshal.
Okay,
I'll second, Madam Chair.
thank you. We have a name and a second. Anything else? Anyone else? Hearing none, let's take, there's a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Chaplinsky.
No.
Del Santo.
No.
DiPaolo.
Yes?
Dietzick.
No.
Lombardi.
No.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Triano.
No. Let's move on to.
You want to table that or another name?
Madam Chair,
Are there
I
other
have a-
yes, are there
Madam
other
Chair, I'll-
nominations?
Yeah, I'll nominate, I'll put the nomination for John Moyse. John was a fire commissioner from 2016 to 2020. He understands the budget process, having been a Board of Finance member and a chairman for 8 years. He worked to successfully increase the volunteer firefighter ranks before and during COVID as the chairman of the Recruitment and Retention Committee. He assisted in increasing the career firefighting ranks. He understands the climate of the fire departments and what the needs are, including apparatus and life-saving tools and training. His entire family has been in the fire service throughout their lives in Providence, Rhode Island. He will work with all members for the betterment of the department and assist in increasing the volunteer firefighter ranks. And he has experience and knowledge to assist the Southington Fire Department to move forward in a positive way.
So we have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, any other discussion on this?
I just want to make a comment, Madam Chair. I think it's important that whoever is successfully nominated in here, we have to make sure that the people that we're nominating are vetted, and that we have people that are, going to be able to collaborate and work in a positive environment. Our police commissions, fire commissions, these are very important boards, and they have personnel attached to them as well. So it's imperative that we get these right.
Okay, so we
So,
have.
Madam Chair, I just, Mr. Kapinski, could you maybe elaborate on that? So what you're saying is that the people that we've nominated will not work in a collaborative manner on the Fire Commission? I mean, just to be transparent, I mean, we're nominating qualified people for these positions, and you're not given any reason to say that you're not voting for them, except you just made a statement that it's imperative that we nominate people that are going to be able to work with on these boards and commissions. And so we've put out qualified people that we believe they have been vetted through the Democratic Town Committee, and we do believe that they will work in a positive manner on the commission. And it's one spot we're looking for here. There's 4 Republicans. It's a Democratic appointment, we thought. We're trying to provide qualified people. We've talked about it in our caucus. We've talked about it with the town committee. We're not really sure what else we can do.
Just to take it a step further, too, to your point, Paul, Bethany has served as the vice chair of the Conservation Commission. It is a Republican-controlled commission, and yet they elected her as the vice chair of that. That, to me, speaks to the ability to work collaboratively among both Democrats and Republicans. So to your point, that's one of the reasons we nominated Bethany. She's a teacher in town. She has experience with the fire department. So again.
I think we need to move the vote. I think we voted on Ms. Solari already, so I think we need to move on.
All right,
to
well,
Ms.
same with John Moist. John has
All right.
served as a member of the Fire Commission. He certainly has a family background and knows the history of the department, and I think can contribute to the betterment of the department overall.
All right, is there anything else? Any other discussion? Let's call the roll.
Chaplinsky?
No.
Del Santo?
No.
DiPaolo?
Yes.
Diedzik?
No.
Lombardi?
No.
Morelli?
Yes.
Palmieri?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Triano?
No.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to table this.
Second?
Call the roll.
Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Del Santo?
Yes.
DiPaolo?
No to table.
Diedzik?
Yes, to table.
Lombardi?
Yes to table.
Morelli?
Yes, the table.
Palmieri?
No.
Perry?
No to table.
Triano?
Yes to table. Okay, item 4 is Self-Insurance Committee, 1 member, 2 years, expiring 2023. This is Bill C. He has to step down. And Paul, I would like to put Paul's name in for consideration. Oh, it's my appointment, right. Paul, you're in. Item 5, Zoning Board of Appeals alternate.
Madam Chair, I will put the name of Alicia Novi. Alicia is a staff attorney with the Connecticut Office of Health Strategy. Part of her job responsibilities include acting as a hearing officer for Certificate of Need hearings within the agency. She served a full term on the Zoning Board of Appeals and has served as the chair and the vice chair of the Board of Appeals. I think she would be well qualified to serve in the alternate position. She's obviously served on this board and was able to get along with everyone and serve well.
And we have a second?
I'll second.
Good. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Any other nominations, anything else? Okay, let's go. Call the roll, please.
Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Del Santo?
Yes.
DiPaolo?
Yes?
Dietzick.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes, welcome back, Alicia. All right, how
Madam
will...
Chair, a motion to adjourn.
No,
to
no, no,
executive-
we
Wait, we got
added,
library
we
board.
added
Oh,
library
right.
board.
Library board.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Not so fast.
All right, sorry.
Item number 6, we received Representative Poulis's resignation from the library board. I'm looking for a name.
Madam Chair, I will nominate Kristen Gaida. Kristen, just to give you a bio, Kristen is a lifelong Southington resident. She's currently a member of the town committee, the Democratic Town Committee, and she's serving as an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals. She works as an acute care nurse practitioner and at Hartford Hospital on the vascular surgery service. She has been a registered nurse for over 20 years. She is also an associate professor of nursing at Capital Community College. She has served as a past president of STEPS. She's currently on the advisory board of STEPS as a member, and I believe Kristen would be an excellent addition to the Southington Library Museum Board of Directors.
I'll second Kristen.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion on it? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Japlinsky.
Yes.
Del Santo.
Yes.
DiPaolo.
Yes.
Dietzick.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Welcome, Kristen. Very
Now
good.
Make a motion to adjourn into executive session, barring the press and the public, but including town attorney and Mr. Sheffy, correct?
That is correct.
Attorney Sheffy.
Attorney Sheffy, I apologize, Esquire.
I'll second that.
Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.